Already? I think it's appropriate on. I don't know.
Good evening, everyone. This is the Puyallup City Council meeting for September 10th is called to order. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So this evening is a very busy evening, as many of you know. So with that, I will have our city clerk call roll.
Deputy Mayor King,
Excused.
Councilmember Gilliam,
Present.
Councilmember Whitting,
Present.
Councilmember Dorr,
Present.
Councilmember Adler,
Present.
Councilmember Johnson,
Excused.
Mayor Castamount.
Present. Thank you. Good to see everyone here this evening. At this point in the meeting, it's the beginning, and we always recognize any students we have in the audience. And we had no students until we just had two young individuals enter in. And we like to acknowledge you at all of our meetings, the youth that we have in the audience. Frankly, you are the future leaders of this community, and we hope that you someday join us up here as leaders of this community. So with that, do you mind just standing up, saying your name and what school you're with? Wonderful. Well, thank you. And I assume that's your mother or a student with you? Okay, good seeing you. Thank you for bringing them to us. With that, I'd like to have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's move forward to number 2, consideration of minutes. We have the approval of the August 20th, 2024 minutes. Do I have a motion for approval?
I make a motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Now we're going to move on to presentations and proclamations. And the first proclamation, or actually the proclamation we're going to read today, is a Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And I'll read that from here. Childhood cancer is leading cause of death by disease in children. And whereas each year worldwide, there are more than 413,000 new childhood cancer diagnoses. And whereas although the 5-year survival rate for childhood cancer has reached 80%, nearly 9,620 American children under the age of 15 are expected to be diagnosed with cancer in 2024. And about 1,040 children are expected to die from the disease. And whereas 2/3 that do survive will face at least one chronic health condition later in life as a result of the treatment toxicity, and with 1/4 being classified as severe to life-threatening. And whereas there are hundreds of children being treated for cancer in Washington State with locations in Seattle Children's Hospital, Mary Bridge Hospital, and Shriners Hospital for Children. Whereas the causes of childhood cancer are largely unknown and more must be done to study this disease, we raise awareness and also find a cure. Now therefore, be it proclaimed by the Puyallup City Council that September 10th through October 1st be recognized as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Eyewitness thereof, Mayor Jim Castema, hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the city of Puyallup to be affixed this 10th day of September 2024. So the individuals who brought this forward, I want to thank them for doing that. It's important that we highlight issues like this in our community. Now, number 3B, presentations and proclamations. We have a presentation of a 35-year service award for a city employee, Bonnie Anderson. Bonnie, please come forward, and we have our city manager, Steve Kirkley, who would like to address this.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Castleman, Council. It is my honor today to introduce to you, though many of you know Bonnie Anderson. When an employee reaches a milestone like 35 years with Team Puyallup, we've got to celebrate it. And so tonight we're going to celebrate Bonnie's accomplishment of being here for 35 years. Started with the city in 1989. Went to school at University of Washington, got her BA and her master's. So she's a double dub, I think is what they call it, since she has both degrees. And then started in the library, worked down in Vancouver, Washington for a few years, and then moved over to Walla Walla. And then eventually made her way here in 1989 and was in the old library that some of you may remember. So Bonnie, thank you for your 35 years. Very much appreciate it. And Nicole Erickson, our library director, is going to talk a little bit more about Bonnie, and then we have something to present to Bonnie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Well, it's a great pleasure to be here today honoring Bonnie Anderson. 35 years ago, she joined Team Puyallup and shared her lively story times, her passion for storytelling, and a strong commitment to early childhood development with the Puyallup community. Here we are 35 years later, and those very children that she first read to now bring their children and extended families into the library for story time and other children's programs. She's a fierce library advocate and a creator of community for children and families alike. Bonnie has fostered a community of literacy, curiosity, and adventure, and she's pretty great to work with too. It's wonderful to work for a city that values and supports the many ways that libraries make a difference in people's life at every age and stage. And it's especially great that the children in this community have had such an amazing talent as Bonnie as they grow into themselves and create the communities of tomorrow. Congratulations, Bonnie.
Thank you. Bonnie, if you'd like to say a few words. By the way, 35, that's longer than I've been married. So that's amazing. Anyway, go ahead, please.
Once upon a time. Now, those are magic words for most of us, right? It kind of makes you smile and warms your heart. And that's because somebody took the time to share stories and books. Well, I'm privileged to be somebody that gets to do that a lot. I've been doing story times for a long time. And I've been a storyteller even longer than that. I've been a storyteller for 60 years. I got my Girl Scout badge in storytelling when I was in the 4th grade. So yes, 60 years.
Wow.
Beyond storytelling, I also share books, and I love being able to find just the right book for somebody. But what you might not know is I have a science background, and I like sharing that with kids too, especially if I can do a program where I put out stuff, give them a little bit of information, and then turn them loose. And they think they're just playing, but they're actually learning. And I love that aha moment when something clicks and they understand. And that is going to stick with them way more than just somebody telling them about it. And I've been privileged to be doing that for a long time too. I was here in the old building. I was here when we designed the current building that's 4 times larger than the old building. And we've made some changes over the years. We have the imagination station now where kids get to use their imagination. And we're in the process of designing a little update for the teens as well, because they deserve a good space. Every step along the way, I've been so proud to be a part of this city and a part of the library. I love what I do. I love the city. I love the library. And thank you for giving me that chance.
You bet. You're welcome. I'll join you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is 3C, State of the Court Address. And Andrea Beal, our court, our justice in our community, will come forward. Is it appropriate that we all rise? Is that what we should do, or?
Not necessary this evening.
Okay, well, proceed.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you, Mr. Mayor and council members. This is the first time that I have presented a State of the Court address in the city of Puyallup, although I have been here now for 12 years. And as you mentioned, I am Andrea Beal, the judge at the municipal court. But I think it's important to share with you and the public what work we are doing at the court. So we do have a mission statement at the court. I am not going to read this statement to you now, but I am going to highlight it as I continue with my presentation tonight. As you know, I am elected by the citizens of Puyallup to serve the city as your municipal court judge. I am the only judge, so I am the leader of your judicial branch of government. And as the only judge in the court, I am also always the presiding judge. So what that means is not only do I facilitate cases and preside over courtroom proceedings, but I'm responsible for all administration of the court, all setting of policy, overseeing the budget, and staff management ultimately, which those day-to-day operations are generally done by my court administrator, Ellen Atterbury, who has been with us now since 2019. And we work very much in tandem on those issues, but that is ultimately my responsibility. And we oversee a staff that totals 11. So we have several hardworking court clerks. Not only are they providing court clerk services for us, but they are providing court clerk services for the city of Milton, who holds court at the court once a week. We have a probation officer who has quite a heavy caseload, has almost 150 cases on their caseload. They are supported by a probation assistant. We have our community court case manager, and we have one bailiff who is our security at the court and does work full-time in that capacity. So part of our mission statement is that we are ensuring the provision of mandated services. So certainly our primary responsibility is to provide a fair and neutral forum for the adjudication of cases that are filed into the City of Puyallup Municipal Court. And we are a court of limited jurisdiction. So that means that I only have authority to hear all criminal misdemeanors that happen within the City of Puyallup, the city limits. So the most serious cases that we deal with on the criminal level would be punishable by up to 364 days in jail and a $5,000 fine. And I also hear all infractions that occur within the city limits of Puyallup. So that's not only traffic infractions, that's parking, civil infractions, for example, animal control violations or code enforcement violations, and then the photo enforcement program. And the photo enforcement program makes up the vast majority of our caseload. We average more than 35,000 filings on the photo enforcement program annually. But what I'm going to talk to you about is the other cases that we hear. And so this is a snapshot of the first 6 months of last year as compared to the first 6 months of this year. And you'll see that the cases overall are down. That's largely due to the parking enforcement. The City of Puyallup Police Department did not have a parking enforcement officer for a period of time. So that's really where the gap is. What's really important in this graph are the criminal cases, because that is really what takes the majority of our time. We hold court almost every morning and almost every afternoon, each day of the week. It's 90% is criminal calendars that we're holding. And so that is also what your legal department is mostly invested in. So our other criminal, that's assaults, thefts, nuisance crimes, anything that's domestic violence designated, went up from 318 in the first 6 months of last year to 708 in the first 6 months of this year. And also incredibly significantly on this graph is the DUI enforcement. So our city has always been very heavily involved in DUI enforcement, running emphases and files a lot more DUIs than most of the jurisdictions our size. But this year, especially compared to last year, we've really gone up significantly in that number. So in the first 6 months of last year, we had 132 DUIs filed into the court. The first 6 months of this year, we've had 255. And I can just tell you anecdotally, that has not let up in the last 2 months. And July, August, and September are equally as busy, if not more, particularly with the extra enforcement that's done during the period of time of the fair. In addition to having our day-to-day court hearings, we have a responsibility to serve the citizens in doing other business of the court. So one thing I wanted to highlight for you is the work we did on Blake. And that's because you've probably seen a lot of Blake reimbursement requests come through before you. And so I want to explain a little bit about what that is. So for the public that don't know what I'm talking about when I say Blake, State versus Blake was a case decided by the Washington State Supreme Court a few years ago that determined simple possession of drugs without some proof of intent or knowledge was unconstitutional. So that put a responsibility on the courts to go back and look at all of the cases that have been filed as far back as we could go. So in the city of Puyallup, that went back to the late 80s. And with the help of the legal department, determining what cases were appropriate for review, myself and a pro tem, and we used Judge Allen, who's the Judge Allen Municipal Court as a pro tem, to help us. We reviewed over 4,800 cases to determine whether or not they qualified for vacation under Blake. And if they did, they were vacated. So those persons no longer have those convictions, and 888 cases qualified for that vacation. So with this Blake legislation, the legislature also allocated certain funds for persons to have the costs and fines that they paid to the court reimbursed if they had a conviction vacated. So the monies that you're approving or have approved in the past were to support our staff and the effort that it took to go through all these cases, process the vacations, notify the administrative office of the courts of what cases were vacated, how much fines and fees were paid by people. But the money that the people might be entitled to, that's being reimbursed through the state. So there is a Blake Refund Bureau with the administrative office of the courts that is facilitating those refunds. But we did have the responsibility of notifying them of what those amounts would be if people did come forward and make the claims. And at the time that I prepared the presentation, we were aware of only 2 persons that were entitled to refunds that in the city of Puyallup that came forward. And certainly not all of the 888 cases that qualified for vacation had costs paid on them. Fortunately, lots of fines and fees don't get paid in the court system, but for those who did, they had the opportunity to address the Administrative Office of the Court Refund Bureau and make a request for that reimbursement. I also have responsibility for reviewing search warrants. So for the first 6 months of this year, I reviewed 95 search warrants. As you can see, again, the vast majority of those are related to DUI enforcement. If someone has drugs in their system, that can only be detected by a blood test. Sometimes if it's alcohol, officers also will seek a blood warrant to determine the amount of alcohol. And again, the majority of those are done after hours. So as I said, our day-to-day court operations are largely devoted to criminal, and we have designated calendars each morning and afternoon to facilitate the hearings, but also once a month we have jury trials. So to facilitate jury trials, every month we send out 300 summons to persons in our area that are served by the court to ask them to come and be jurors. Of that, we usually whittle it down to about 25 to 30 who actually come into the court to serve as jurors, but it's a large administrative process that my clerks go through to get those jurors and to have them respond. And then in the last 18 months, we've done about 10 jury trials, and most of those were domestic violence related charges. We also have in our mission that we are always working to provide the community with fair, equitable, and accessible access to justice. So I want to highlight some of the programs we've instituted to make our court system more accessible to the citizens. One thing that we have instituted in the last few years came about because of COVID. So because of COVID, we still had to operate, but we wanted to try to decrease the traffic coming to the court and make it possible for people not to have to appear in court to adjudicate their matters. Ellen worked very closely with the city's IT department to develop a bank of online court forms. So persons who are requesting excusal from jury service can go through that. Persons who are requesting a hearing by mail can submit it through the online portal. Someone who wants to have a payment plan can make a request through that, or have their if their action has gone to collections, have that revisited by the court. They might file a motion through that. But since we instituted that in late 2020, we've had over 11,000 filings through that system. So it's very popular with the public and is working well for us. It's 11,000 fewer contacts at the counter, 11,000 fewer phone calls, but it's still quite a workload. We also used funds that were made available during the COVID years by the state for IT enhancements. So as you can see, this is a screenshot that's very similar to what you had on your screen before I started presenting. We have a true hybrid system now that, so some of the reimbursement funds that you approved went to create this. We are one of the very few courts in the state that have a true hybrid system. So I am sitting at my bench and someone can sign in on Zoom and be seen by me and be able to see what's happening in the court. Where we've really found this to be valuable is with interpreters, because we do have an obligation to provide anyone who does not speak English well or at all to have an interpreter available and have all of the proceedings interpreted for them. But interpreter services can be very difficult to secure. So sometimes we might have an interpreter who's in Eastern Washington, and so it would be very expensive to have them come to the court, but also it's much easier for them to sign in on Zoom and provide that interpreter services. You've also approved interpreter reimbursement funds over the last couple of years. So what that is a partnership between us and the state where we are eligible to have up to 50% of our interpreter costs reimbursed by the state. So when we do have to pay an interpreter to appear either through our hybrid system or actually physically appearing in court, which is the preferred method, we have to pay them for their time, obviously. And so the state reimburses up to half of that, but they reimburse 100% of hard costs. So what we've been able to do with those funds is improve the signage at our court. So this is an example of one of the signs that we have. And as you can see, it's interpreted into Spanish and Russian. And that's because those are the languages that we see most often in our court. Spanish is by far the largest population of interpreter needs that we have in our court. And then Russian is behind that. But over the last year, we have had 27 different languages that needed to be interpreted in our court. That includes ASL. So 26 spoken languages that we have secured interpreters for, and the state has reimbursed up to half of those funds. And then we have a program that we call the UP program. It's a universal payment program. And what this is a coalition of courts in King County and Pierce County that have come together to make it easier for people to pay their fines and get their licenses. So if you have a traffic infraction that goes unpaid, it can result in suspension of your driving privilege. And if you have multiple courts that have that action, it can be really hard for somebody to dig their way out of that situation. And so what the UP program allows is for them to make one payment that's dispersed across the jurisdiction that they owe. It allows the hold to be released with Department of Licensing so they can go back to work, drive lawfully, and that allows the city to collect money that they probably would not have otherwise have collected. It probably would have just languished in collections. So the UP program has been accessed by a number of people since we instituted it about 3 years ago. We also are always striving to reduce recidivism. So I've had the opportunity to address you in the past regarding our community court. That is our one therapeutic court in the city of Puyallup. It's a great program. We have a lot of positive feedback from our participants. This is a board we have in our courtroom showing our most recent graduates. With the therapeutic court reimbursement funds that you have approved, we've been able to bolster our program significantly by having our case manager work full-time and really help people get the services that they need to hopefully get up and out of the justice system. We have community partners in that we have treatment agencies that come to the court every Tuesday afternoon. We had community court this afternoon to make it easy for people to access services. Some of our therapeutic court funds have gone to things like bus passes that we're able to provide people so that they can get to treatment or appointments that they need to get to. And then the picture there is of our attendance at the RISE conference. So RISE used to be the National Association of Drug Courts. Now they call it the RISE program because therapeutic courts have expanded so much beyond just drug courts. There's mental health courts, veterans courts, community courts. It's a very large conference. Over 7,500 people from across the U.S. and out of the U.S. attend it, but it's an excellent conference and it really provides us with some really important training. And this year, because of the therapeutic grant reimbursement, we were able to invite a prosecutor and public defender, as well as myself and case manager, attend that conference. And then we've started recently what we call DVMRT classes. So that's domestic violence moral recognition therapy. And it's a behavioral cognitive therapy that has been in existence for several years. The Department of Corrections uses it quite a bit, but it's now been tailored to domestic violence, and many courts at our level, misdemeanor and municipal and district courts are implementing these through their probation departments. And so we've done that as well. And so what it allows is anytime someone is convicted of domestic violence, they're required to follow through with the treatment program. And the domestic violence treatment intervention programs are all private and can be very expensive and are not reimbursed by insurance. So medical insurance won't cover that cost. And there's no state program for domestic violence intervention treatment. So this is an alternative to that for people who are low income. And this is the photograph here is the workbook that we use, and it's facilitated by our probation department with our probation officer and our probation assistant being trained to administer. We also have our community court case manager trained as a backup instructor, and we have both a men's and a women's group. And it has proven to be an effective program. And then finally, in our mission statement, we have the importance of maximizing our ability to best perform our various functions. And then one of the ways that Ellen and I find that to be, or that we implement that, is through enriching our own education and our own experience in the broader court system through our engagement in our professional associations. So we have a very active role and I'm in the DMCJA, she's in the DMCMA. So mine is the District and Municipal Courts Judges Association. And through the 12 years that I've been at the city, I've always been active in that organization, having taken on different roles. What I do currently with them is I'm a representative on the Board for Judicial Administration, which is a coalition of judges from across all court levels in the state of Washington. And through that, we call it the BJA, we set policy for the state courts. We manage the budget for the state court system, the administrative office of the courts. And I'm also currently faculty on the Judicial College. So everyone who's elected or appointed to the bench in Washington has to attend Judicial College within 1 year. So it's important not only to learn the laws, which you might think you already know as a lawyer, but how to implement them from the judicial side of the bench, and then just being a judge and learning how about procedural fairness and how to facilitate an interpreter and conduct yourself on and off the bench. So this upcoming year, I'll be assistant dean at the Judicial College, and then the following year, I'll be the dean of the Judicial College. And Ellen is also very active in her associations. She's a recent past president of the DMCMA. She's also active in the National Association, is on a lot of committees. And what this really, it helps us in that we learn in our professional development, but also we network and we have the support of other courts at our level. And it's really been valuable to us. For example, we currently have a vacancy in our probation department. As our probation officer left, we haven't yet filled it. We have other probation officers from other courts stepping in to help us continue monitor people in that absence. So having that network and that interaction with the other courts is really important. And then finally, we find it's really important to educate the public. Most people who don't work in the court system don't understand the court system or know what happens in the courts. So as I'm speaking to you today, I like to speak to service groups. We have Puyallup 101 in the city. We're very happy to be a part of that and have people come through the court and learn about the court when they're in Puyallup 101. We've done what's called You've Been Served, and Councilmember Dorr attended once, as well as Councilmember Johnson. And that is an invitation at our level courts, municipal courts and district courts, to have legislators come and learn what it is we're doing. We're doing that again this October. And I'm part of Judges in the Classroom, so I go and speak at classes when I have the opportunity to. And then we had our first ever Law Day this year. So Law Day is an annual event put on by the American Bar Association. It's supposed to be May 1st of each year. This was the first year that we implemented it in the Puyallup Municipal Court. And we had the partnership of the police department. Really appreciate the police supporting us in that. What we did was have 6th graders from Stewart Elementary walk over and do a field trip to the court. I spoke to them about the court system, and then we did a mini job fair. So they learned about what it's like to have a job in corrections, police, court administration, probation, and it was a successful event. I know the principal of Stewart Elementary was very happy to have been invited and have been able to participate in that, and we certainly hope to make it an annual tradition. So I hope I kept myself to Mr. Kirkley's time limit. I tried, and I'll take questions if you have them.
Thank you, Judge. We really appreciate that. Normally, on our presentations, I don't allow questions
Okay.
because it's not an actual featured presentation that we have through Q&A, but I will in this case because it's good that you came before us. Again, you haven't done this in how long?
12 years.
12 years. Okay, well, glad you're here. Okay, with that, any questions by any of the members? Councilmember Gilliam.
I don't actually have any questions. I just have, holy smokes, girl, you're amazing. Education, continuing expanding services, I've had the opportunity to be around Judge Beal for a few years, and her character is phenomenal. The way that she talks about all the great work that is happening to support our citizens and not just crack down, but help move out of. And that is so invaluable to our community. It's incredible. And I actually learned quite a bit new information through this presentation. I love that you have interpreters. That's incredible. And I love that we can just bring them in on Zoom. So overall, what I'm hearing from you is you're fiscally responsible. Sounds like we might need to get you another caseworker. 150 to 1 is pretty intense. But I'm very excited and proud of and grateful for you and your team and the work that you do for the city of Puyallup. So thank you very much.
Thank you for those kind words. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. Judge, I just want to express my appreciation. I've had the opportunity to observe your courtroom. I love the community court and the ways that you are working towards getting people out of their behavioral patterns and getting them reducing recidivism. I think that you're very fair, and I have always appreciated the opportunities afforded to me by your court to understand the process, what you're doing, and I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you as well.
Councilmember Adler.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Judge Beal, thank you. Appreciate your time and appreciate your staff. Echo the comments of my colleagues. I just wanted to say that I am willing to be served. So I hope that you will make a note and would love to come in and spend some time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for that. I do have just one very brief question. I think, take this up with our police department, but I want to ask your opinion. Other criminal crimes have gone from 318 in the first 6 months of last year to 708. So that's more than doubling. DUIs 132 to 255. Do you have an explanation?
Well, I don't know what the staffing levels of the police department, how much they've changed. I know that there's very vigorous enforcement of all of our laws by the police department, which I'm sure the city appreciates. The DUIs, I can't really explain. For a while, I thought they were going up because we have more people that are drug addicted and living in their cars. So that creates a situation where people will often get arrested for even just being in control of their vehicle while under the influence, even if they're not moving down the road. That's a possibility, and we lump that in with DUIs. But we've just really seen a lot of alcohol-related incidents too recently. And so I don't know the explanation for that dramatic increase. I think it's not isolated to Puyallup. I think it's a nationwide trend that DUIs are again kind of on the rise. And the Chief Engel might know more about that as well. Unfortunately, it seems to just to have something in the last few years that's kind of shifted, where again, that is a big problem.
Okay. Well, thank you. And we will make sure that it's not another 12 years before you're back.
Okay, thank you.
So appreciate it.
Thank you again for your time.
You're welcome. So at this point, we have citizen comments. This is kind of one of our favorite times. Public comments will be taken this time in person, and our city clerk will read the guidelines. Go ahead, Dan.
This part of the meeting is for general citizen comments. Please reserve any public hearing testimony to that section of the agenda. The mayor will call on those who have provided their names in advance. Then the mayor will call for other citizens who wish to speak. For the record, please state your name and address or city council district in which you reside. Please direct your comments to the council as a whole, not individual council members. All comments are limited to 3 minutes. The clerk will provide verbal notice when only 30 seconds remain. As a reminder, this portion of the meeting is council's opportunity to hear from the community and not a time to engage in debate. Lastly, per state law, this public comment period cannot be used to speak in support of or in opposition to a ballot measure or individual candidacy, and no such comments will be allowed.
Okay, with that, if you have not filled out one of these forms yet, feel free to do so and hand it to our city clerk and he'll get it to me. Or like I say, when we're done with these, I will go ahead and just ask from the audience, but this way you get in the queue if you'd like to do that. You each have 3 minutes, and you'll be given a 30-second warning when you're within that 3 minutes But keep in mind that at the 3-minute mark, I don't mean to be rude at all, but I will go ahead and ask you to curtail at that point. And I have to make sure that I treat everyone exactly the same on these comments. So with that, the first person is John Hopkins.
John Hopkins, District 1. Mr. Mayor and the few members of council that are here and others on the screen. First thing I want to say is that, yes, you're showing a neck gaiter, high quality, no cheap t-shirts for you. Goodwill doesn't need any more old t-shirts. And if you look on the website, you'll see an update with some pictures of the event that we had about a month ago. And you'll see kids having a load of fun at Veterans Park. Hopefully we'll proceed and do the same sort of thing next year, bigger and better. Let's see, a couple of other little things. Item 4C on the consent agenda. A conservation district, you're working with the conservation district, and they are the experts when it comes to water quality. So I'm glad you're collaborating with, I can say us, seeing as I'm on the board. So that's good. Third thing, inevitability, death taxes, and what do we have? The public safety building. There's another inevitability, isn't it? It's back again, and this time I'm happy to say I rather like this iteration. It doesn't hit me as hard as the previous ones. The load is spread around, and I think that's only fair. So I would have supported it the way it is, so that's good. The only thing I'm not thrilled about are 30-year bonds. You know, that's a long time. You know, note Kathy Turner's never given credit for doing 15-year bonds. If there's any way to squeeze it down, that would be great. You know, maybe you can look under a few more couch cushions. What about the property on the hill that I don't know that we need it anymore, do we? You know, I certainly voted for it, for us acquiring it to begin with the safety building, but why do we need it now? There's a couple of million there that could be squeezed out of that. And there's other surplus property knocking around. And then there's my favorite one that'll probably annoy Council Member Doyle, but why don't we charge
30 seconds.
Why don't we charge Central Pierce for rent for the properties that we own? And by the way, why haven't they built their new station that we as the public voted for? There's supposed to be one already built by now, but we don't have it. That would help vacate the existing public safety building. 5 seconds, right on time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person is, I apologize, but it's Kilon. Is that correct? Kilon Foster Hughes.
Before I begin, I would like to know if this is a topic that's okay to talk about freely.
Yes.
Okay.
If it pertains to city business, please.
Not really much.
Well, let's see.
Personal.
Why don't you go with it?
Hello, Council. My name is Keelan Hughes. I live at 12309 158th Street, Court E. And I'm actually here today going on because of some ongoing efforts in my life. This past year, I've been dealing with a lot of harassment, and to the point to where I had to piece everything together as a whole bunch happened before I ended up back in Seattle, which I'm glad that I'm back in Seattle. But the biggest things is that when everything started, I had to figure out what was happening because there was a lot of unknowns during this process, and I had to kind of get them out so I can understand what's really happening around me. So they had some hospitals involved in everything to the point to where I was misdiagnosed. And I really didn't appreciate that, but it felt back on the fact that I was premeditated on. during this process, which I really didn't appreciate, but I am getting help from agencies. I just wanted to make it aware that I may need that more help or more resources or guidance to get me to where I need to be at towards this predicament. As such, for example, I had my kids used as leverage in this process, which I really don't appreciate. And once they started using my kids, it really hit home for me, and I didn't appreciate the fact it left me in a emotional bundle in a way. And it's not just with that. I've actually had court cases in terms of this started open with the hospitals that are involved, to the point to where the biggest things was the fact that it fell back on not only people that I cared about, but loved ones that I would never think that they would do something like this to me. And to the point to where I had some tampering with evidence being done, which was something that I caught on to.
30 seconds.
I was making aware of, to the point to where they sit here and they stage events. They sat here and put defamation and slandering my name to the point to where it traveled to my workplace, which I really don't appreciate. And more concerning issues, the biggest things is the fact that regardless if they were sitting here lying through this electronic harassment, it needs to be fixed.
Mr. Mayor, the speaker's reached 3 minutes.
Kalon, we're at 3 minutes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wish you well.
Thank you.
The third person we have is Paul Romich.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. Last week I spoke on public safety and DUIs and red light camera citations, and it's really concerning to see how much that has increased over the past year. So thank you to our police for keeping our streets safe in that regard. But staying on the topic of cars, we continue to discuss about the stresses of cars without even considering a solution to the source of inefficiency. Cars are space inefficient, creating traffic. Cars are space inefficient, so we spend thousands on studies and countless hours discussing parking supply. Cars take up a ton of space and spend 96% of their lives not in use. Yet we subsidize them. We don't have free sewer. We don't have free electricity. We don't have free transit. We don't even get free drinking water. But why is parking, which is also a public utility, expected to be free? There were protests on the dais to the thought of paid parking at the last meeting, but why should non-driving taxpayers subsidize drivers? The Sound Transit Garage and surface lots brought 673 parking spaces for over $82 million. That's more than this community was willing to spend on public safety, and it works out to $122,362 per parking space. How much would you pay to park it for your car for a year? Probably close to zero, because that's just the expectation. With regular maintenance, the lifespan of a lot is 25 years. Therefore, Sound Transit is subsidizing drivers by $4,895 dollars a year per space, and that doesn't include maintenance costs. Regular maintenance is lot restriping, resurfacing, pothole filling, etc. That's not free. The capital and recurring maintenance costs for free parking, whether at Sound Transit or at grocery stores or bars or any business, as the city mandates this parking, are priced into goods and services because separating out the costs is not popular. The fact that people consider us to have a parking shortage when 1 in 10 spaces are available at peak demand, not including the garage, shows that excess, not efficiency, is the expectation. Paid parking only has benefits, added revenue and less congestion. Yet we operate on outdated parameters. That public space should be allocated for the storage of private property. As elected officials, we should encourage the efficient use of public resources. There are ways to move people more effectively, but we've rendered transit inefficient and biking unsafe by prioritizing and subsidizing cars. As Fred Kent, designer of Times Square and Rockefeller Plaza, said, if we plan cities for cars and traffic, we'll get cars and traffic. If we plan for people and places, we'll get people and places. It's not hard to see how well that applies to Puyallup. Just take a ride down Meridian. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I'm through with the individuals who have signed up at the beginning of the meeting. If there's anyone else who would like to comment, provide a few words, if I'm looking at you, it's not to put pressure on you. But if there is no one, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Oh, yes, please. And what you do is if you could just tell us your name and your address or district you're from, that would be helpful.
My name is Yulia Isa. I live on Shaw Road, off of Shaw Road. And I didn't have a comment prepared, but I just do want to say I heard about the interpreter services provided at the in court for immigrants. I'm myself an immigrant. I speak multiple languages. And just from the immigrant community, I want to thank you for putting in this effort. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was very kind of you. Okay, we'll continue with the consent agenda. Consent agenda, just for the public's knowledge, is where we have a number of items that are non-controversial and require no further discussion, and we make one vote as opposed to a vote on every single one of them. Having said that, is there any one of these items 4A to 4H that any member of the council would like to have discussed individually? Hearing none, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let's move on to resolutions. 5A, a resolution updating the city's employment position portfolio and associated salary schedule. And we're going to have our Human Resources Director, Katie Ortega, and our Chief of Police, Scott Engel, address this, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm Katie Ortega, Human Resources Director, and I'm here with Chief Scott Engel to provide information regarding a resolution to update the city's employment position portfolio and associated salary schedule with the addition of a police data analyst classification. So as you're aware, it's council's authority to create and fund employment positions here at the city. In April 2015, council adopted a comprehensive employment position portfolio, which contains the job titles of just over 400 job classifications. These titles are of current positions that are currently filled and funded and potential future job classifications. Council has periodically updated this position portfolio to either add new job titles or assign a salary to a classification that's not currently in use and is not currently assigned to a pay grade on any of our salary schedules. Updates may arise due to actions such as reorganization of departmental work that creates in a new position being formed in response to a difficult labor market where we create a new classification to have more flexibility in our recruiting, reclassification of positions due to changing duties or an expanding role of an existing position, or in response to a specific service need. Tonight, we're asking to add a new classification titled Police Data Analyst to allow for the reclassification of an existing admin secretary position at the police department. And we're reclassifying this to be a more skilled specialist position. Chief Engel can discuss a bit about the history of the current position and how this reclassification will enhance operations at the Puyallup Police Department.
Mayor Castleman, members of council, Scott Engel, Chief of Police. So as Director Ortega noted, we're replacing a current FTE, which was an administrative secretary in our Criminal Investigations Division. That position was originally created in 1995, and the person recently retired from that position after 28 years of service with the department and the city. There's been many changes over the last many years on how detectives actually investigate cases and support that they need in that process, technology being one of the biggest factors. When the administrative secretary assumed that position in 1995, we actually didn't have computers. We wrote reports by hand. Transcription was done by this position. And we did not have what's called electronic case assignment, which is what is in place now. So as time has evolved, the way in which we investigate cases in CID has also evolved. And as this person has retired, it has allowed us to take a look at that position and bring it current to best practices today. Our police data analysts will bring to the police department current best practices for supporting case investigation, assistance for both crime analysis and patterns, as well as internal data review to help us with resource allocation and better efficiency. And that's a long way to say that we're going to use data in much of what we do in a different way in the police department through this position. This position will review data for us internally, how we utilize officers, how we address crime patterns, real-time analysis of crime trends that are happening in our community, and be able to provide that information both to our patrol officers, but also to our command staff to make recommendations on resource allocation and deployment. It'll also look at patterns externally for us, what's happening in all neighborhoods, what's happening in our business communities, and be able to utilize that data to make, again, recommendations to the command staff and the department on resource allocation and deployment. This position is a position found in most all agencies of our size, and certainly agencies with the level of activity that we have here in Puyallup. The position will be responsible for statistical gathering and data reporting to include public-facing dashboards. It will produce crime maps using GIS applications and conduct special analysis of crime data. It's a commitment to using data in all that we do in the department. And as our person transitioned out of this position, they were doing that to some degree as they left. This allows us again to bring this position frankly current with 2024, allow us to find best practices in using data in police decision-making, both internally and externally, and provide us with another opportunity to lean forward in a progressive manner in how we utilize the valuable resources we have. The salary difference that's proposed in your agenda bill will come from the current police department budget. And Ms. Ortega's back.
So in terms of process, when we are proposing an update to the position portfolio, HR first completes a comprehensive review of the position with the hiring director to discuss the needs of the department. We review any existing job classifications, both the, in this case, the job that is being reclassified, any internal job classifications we may have that may be related. And then we also look at similar positions at comparable cities before we determine specific job duties. In this case, we found that 6 of 7 of comparable cities do have a crime analyst position. Finally, we determine salary placement based on internal alignment, external market wages, and budgetary considerations. Having done this review, we make the recommendation to update the position portfolio with a police data analyst classification and place that position at pay grade 44 on the non-represented salary schedule. And we're here to answer any additional questions that you may have.
Thank you. Just very quickly. So what we're doing is we're reclassifying an administrative secretary as a police data analyst, and there is no increase in FTE.
Correct.
But there may be a differential in pay depending on the level, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. With that, Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. Katie, so are we removing the position of administrative secretary from the portfolio?
We are not. We just will not be filling this position as an admin secretary.
Is there a reason we're not removing it if we are supplementing that, or if we're adding a new position? And I don't know that we use the word secretary anymore anyway, but why is it that we would leave that position in the portfolio?
We would leave it in the position portfolio because there may be other departments that want to hire an admin secretary position in the future. And this way, that position, that classification still exists, and it's still tied to a salary range on our salary schedules. If we completely removed it and then someone found a need to have that position in the future, because it's not just a police department classification, it could be used across the city, we would have to come back to you and ask you to re-add it back to the position portfolio.
Do we ever review the titles?
Typically, we do not, unless we have not been doing a comprehensive review of job titles. It's been more as a job title has come up or as a position itself is being reviewed. But point taken about secretary is rather antiquated. Like
it isn't.
My prior title being personnel. Yeah.
Yes. And then on the comparable cities, what are they? And are they the same ones we use for contract negotiations and things like that?
They are. So we
Okay.
looked at Olympia, Lakewood, Issaquah, Des Moines, Bothell, Linwood, and Lacey. So these are
Thank you.
similar. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, with that, I assume you want a motion to approve. Is that correct?
Yes, please.
Okay, the mayor would entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, let's move on to, by the way, thank you very much. Number 6 on the agenda, considerations and requests. Transportation Benefit District. We will have, Talika will come forward and give us an outline of what a transportation benefit district is. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So, good evening, Mayor Castma, council members. Tulika Makharia, Performance Management Analyst, and I'm very excited to be here today with quite a staff team, a little scattered, to talk to you about the what, how, why of transportation benefit districts. We are not requesting any council action today. Merely here to share information, and we welcome any questions, clarifying questions, or feedback that you might have for us. So looking at our agenda, I will start with an overview of what transportation benefit districts are and popular ways to fund them. Then Finance Director Barbara Lopez will talk about some staff recommendations and estimated revenues. Then we have our Public Works team, Ken Davies, Scott Hill, and Hans Hunger, who will talk about the need for a TBD. And finally, once again, I'll do a very high-level view of the process to form and fund a transportation business benefit district. So what is a transportation benefit district? It is a quasi-municipal corporation that any city or county in Washington state might form. It is an independent taxing authority, which means it can raise revenue. However, that revenue can only be used for transportation. Those could be specific projects, it could be maintenance, it could be improvements, operations, as long as it is in our city's transportation plan. For accountability, transportation benefit district is required to do annual reports, not only of its finances, but also a transportation improvement performance report. And as of 2024, January 2024, according to MRSC, in Washington, there are 110 cities and towns that have established TBDs, and 16 are in Pierce County. Some additional information about transportation benefit districts. According to, we have RCW 36.73 that provides legislation around these districts. And for instance, boundaries. For almost all TBDs that I looked at, the geographical boundaries of the district were the same as those of the jurisdiction establishing it. So for the city of Puyallup, for instance, our TBD's boundaries would be the same as the city's boundaries. When that happens, when the boundaries are the same, the district is governed by the same legislative body that governs the city. So in that, for our case, it would be the city council would also be the governing body for the transportation business benefit district. And towards the very end, we'll look at a more detailed slide that shows what the multi-step process is and the various decision points required by council to form and fund a TBD. Speaking of funding options, the most popular are the sales and use taxes and vehicle license taxes. For both of those, there is a councilmanic option under sales and use tax. That is the 0.1% sales tax, which can be instituted through a majority vote of the city council. That is the one that staff is recommending, and
Barbara will elaborate on that in the next section. That is a 10-year tax, and after a period of 10 years, it may be renewed, again with a vote of the governing body. There is a voter approval option as well that is not being recommended. Similarly, under vehicle license fees, there is $20 and then over a period of 4 years of $40 fees that can be through a majority vote of the council and a higher amount through a vote of residents. And this slide has I think it's 16 cities in Pierce County that all have currently funded transportation benefit districts, and it shows of those two options, sales tax and vehicle license fees, what they're currently using. And I will hand it over to Finance Director.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Barbara Lopez, Finance Director. The first thing that I wanted to touch on before we moved on to actually talking about the estimated revenues is what street costs are currently actually paid by the general fund. As you can see from this chart, in the 2024 budget, we've got about $3.2 million for street operations. That's the basic road maintenance, signal maintenance, and all of the work performed by our public works crews related to, filling potholes and all of those types of things. Then we also have 1.1 million that goes into street repair and maintenance for some of their larger projects that they do to maintain the streets. And in 24, we actually set aside about 700,000 to go for street capital. That's $5 million in the 24 budget. We do receive some fuel tax and a couple of small miscellaneous revenues that help offset those costs, but the net cost of the general fund is $4.5 million. For the 25 and 26 forecasts, it's very similar. You'll see that the street operations costs are going up slightly, and that we're keeping the street repair and maintenance because that is a tier 1 cost of actually maintaining our streets. But we are not counting on being able to add anything additional for capital. Again, once you take out the fuel tax that we expect to receive for the next biennium, it's 4.1 million in 25 and then 4.25 million in 25. Part of why we're coming forward today with the Transportation Benefit District to help educate you about that is because back in June, I was in front of you with the forecast for the 25-26 budget that indicated that we will have a deficit for that budget. We've gotten further along with it. That story has not changed since then. So we are anticipating about a $4.4 million deficit for just the basic general fund budget for 25 and 26. What we would propose with this transportation benefit district is that the dollars generated by it would help replace some of the monies that the general fund is currently paying for those items, so that then those general fund monies are freed up to go towards other services so that we can keep our city services intact. So that is what we are thinking at this point. So I wanted to provide the context and a little bit of framework behind that before I talked about the estimated revenues. So staff are.
Excuse me, Barbara.
Yes.
If any member has a question as we're going along here, just feel free to raise your hand and I'll go ahead and, because I think many of these may be, timely based on the slides. If
Okay.
not, just go ahead and wait till the end. But anyway, proceed, please.
All right. So with the estimated revenues, staff is recommending the funding source of the 0.1% sales tax. Our biggest reason for that is because, there's a couple of different reasons. It's broader based than like doing the car tabs. With the car tabs, that is simply about the people who own and businesses who own vehicles here in the city of Puyallup. But with the sales tax, it's a broader base of those folks coming into Puyallup for the services that they're getting, the places that they're going to, and those stores that they're going to. And so it correlates better with actually who's using our streets. So under that particular one, it does require a 75-day notice to the Department of Revenue on that, and we can start that tax on January 1, April 1, or July 1. So there's some rules around that one. It is expected to bring in estimated annual revenues of about 3 million. So that 3 million could take care of a good portion of the cost currently paid by the general fund, but not all of it. We retain 100% of those revenues, less Department of Revenue's 1% administrative fee, because they're the ones that are collecting it and then remitting it back to us. Another reason why we didn't select going with the vehicle license fees is the amount that to be generated by that is 900,000, and that's at the high end. It doesn't necessarily correlate well to the problem that we're trying to solve in the general fund as well. So so we would have the 3 million annually, use it for transportation purposes. As Chalika mentioned, it can be operations, it can be maintenance, it can be construction costs, but we would propose to use it for the operations and maintenance costs that are currently being paid for by the general fund. So that's my piece of the presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to, I'm assuming, Public Works Director Ken Davies.
Ken Davies, Public Works Director. I'll be covering the why. So tonight we will discuss the operation and maintenance funding needs for the existing infrastructure throughout the city. Typically, our discussions are related to capital projects, but tonight we will concentrate on preservation of 371.5 lane miles of our roadway network. To explain what a lane mile means, when you travel 1 mile from point A to point B on a 4-lane road, this 1 mile section of roadway contains 4 lane miles of road, a mile of road for each lane. So if we were to lay the 371.5 lane miles end to end, it would be similar to driving to Coos Bay, Oregon from Puyallup. This represents a great deal of roadway infrastructure, which includes sidewalks, signals, signs, and lighting, and all their maintenance needs. Our main preservation treatments that Public Works utilizes to maintain the roadway surfaces are shown, which includes overlays, chip seals, depending on the roadway classification. In an optimum state, we would perform each of these at the appropriate time with an expected average life we experience shown for each treatment and roadway classification. The current $1.1 million of funding has many competing needs that strains the ability to perform preservation at the optimum timing. We will discuss this more later in the PowerPoint. Shown here is a typical life cycle of a roadway. It shows the distress curve a roadway goes through over time. The y-axis shows the road's index score based on 100 being a brand new road at the top and 0 showing a road completely failed at the bottom of this vertical axis. To the left of the axis are example photos of the different road conditions going from good at the top to fair and then poor. At the bottom of the graph, the x-axis, we show time. Different road classifications result in varying amounts of time based on roadway usage, but common between all roads. It is cheaper to keep the roads well maintained at the top of the curve for around $6 to $15 per square yard than it is to let a road fail and require significantly more money of around $80 a square yard if they are allowed to get to a condition needing replacement. If our entire roadway network were to fall into the replacement category of $80 a square yard, it would cost approximately $230 million to replace our entire road system. This is just to replace the road surface. Puyallup's current overall roadway network score is a 73 out of 100, up where chip seals and overlays are the optimum preventative maintenance option. I would like to introduce Scott Hill, Street Supervisor, who will talk in more detail on real-world maintenance needs of the roadway network.
Good evening, Scott Hill, Street Supervisor. My perspective is a little bit different from Ken's. I've been here over 25 years. I spent 20 some years of those out in the road, actually fixing the potholes, sealing the cracks, and digging up the road to patch them. I'll explain some more about crack sealing and chip sealing and why this is a preservation maintenance treatment. Kind of the road, what we're looking for is to preserve the structure of the road. As a house has a foundation, the road has a foundation, and it's not the surface you see, it's the base below the road that is the foundation. It's the structure of the road. The top of the road you see is the wear course, and it's meant to be replaced over time as it wears out. The structure and the base is what we're looking to preserve. What affects that is water, so the big thing we're trying to do is keep water out of the road. So on the slides, Ken pointed out to the first thing we do to a road is we crack seal it. So as you drive down the road, you will see, as in the picture up here, the cracks. And that is essentially, we walk down the road, we see cracks, we see them full of tar, and it seals the road off. It keeps water out of the road. When I was a kid, I learned really quick that if you add water to mud and dirt, you get mud. Much like the road, if we're going to get water in our road, it's going to turn to mud and affect the base. So our job as maintenance crews is to keep water out of the base of the road. So what we do is we have a new road, we patch it 7 to 10 years down the road, down time. The road may crack from, trucks, traffic. It'll give a little bit, actually is considered a flexible treatment. Asphalt's flexible, so it will crack. As the sun, oxidation, it gets a little bit harder, it will crack. We go and we seal those cracks. After a while, the next portion down on Ken's slides is chip seal. To chip seal a road, we want to put chip seal over a good surface. As in Ken's, example, his facts and his dollar figures were for optimum treatment for a good road. If we were to keep these roads up as we should, the $6 a square yard for chip seal would be great. We're not there. When we go and chip seal a road, our maintenance crews spend a month or two patching the roads. On the slide, there's a picture of a patch. That patch is probably, it's 1 ton patch. The past 3 years, we've done 1,300 tons of patches in preparation for chip seal and just road maintenance. If you see a dump truck driving down the road, that is 10 tons of asphalt. And so we've done 1,300 tons in preparation for chip seal. I believe 2023, we had 336 tons of in-house grinding and patching in preparation for chip seal. So when we say chip seal costs $6 a square yard, it's actually more than that in the real life in our road condition. We have to make our roads, bring them up to a condition that's suitable to actually retain the chip seal. If we were to chip seal over a poor surface that has potholes and ruts and dips, the chip seal wouldn't last. So we don't get the expected or the hopeful life expectancy of a chip seal. So there's a lot more that goes into it in the condition of the roads that we currently have. It'd be great to say our roads are good and perfect and we can go and chip seal them every, 15, 20 years to last forever, but we're not there yet. That's what we hope to be in the future. One of the examples we have on this road here to the chip seal slide is Fairview. And that's an example of we want to keep our good roads good. Fairview was relatively new. We cracked sealed it once. It was in good condition, no potholes, no alligators, no, deformation on the road surface, so we can chip seal that road, and that road is good. It's an example of how we should be doing things. The patching example is 31st Avenue Southeast, kind of up by Walmart. As you can see, that road has been crack sealed, it's been patched, and we'll go back and we'll patch next to patches, and we do whatever we can do to keep that road in good condition. This road has been chip sealed, and so this is kind of the current state of it. The section of the overlay, that was the utility project. So as we talked about, getting the 1.1 for maintenance, which goes for chip seals and patching, a lot of times that 1.1 gets spread out to other projects and other needs. And so this was a partnership with the water utilities. They had some issues in Manorwood. And so as you say, we want to save that money to do our maintenance thing. A lot of times that money gets spread out and has other needs, other people, other issues take that money away. And this was an example where we were doing the road, they had to put a water maintenance. We partnered with the water department and spent some of that preservation money to patch Manorwood. It came out great, so no worries there. Again, by road treatment, what does this mean? So in that slide that Ken showed, we had the curve, the how the longer it goes, the more money it takes to fix it. That first example is a rehabilitation. That's 9th Street Southwest. That road has been, as you can see, same as the 31st, it's been patched, it's been chip sealed, it's been crack sealed. It's the point now where we can save that road. If we go back in, as the slide showed earlier, we can do like a, $20, $30 for a grind overlay. This will take a lot more money to actually dig out the bad parts, dig them down, put a new base, put a new asphalt. And after that work is done, then you're to the point where you're $20 or $40 a square yard for asphalt. But there's a lot of prep work that we do just to get there. The next road is West Pioneer. This is an example of a road that's the reconstruction. This road has been again chip sealed. It's been patched upon patched, but in crack sealed. It's kind of beyond our maintenance levels. We go out there and we do what we can do to keep it together. But there's a point when you are overspending, overtaxing your workforce to keep this road in good condition. It needs to be rebuilt. So we're getting there. One indicator of road condition, what they say, what we do is we fill potholes. Street department fills potholes. 2021, we filled 338 potholes. 2023, we had 659. So to me, as a guy out on the road, walking around, that's an indicator of the condition of our road. We're not getting any better. We do the best we can do, but we're not at the optimum level where we can go do our rates of preservation maintenance. We got to, raise the bar a little bit. The cost of deferring maintenance. This is Tacoma Road. This is a road where if you can look in there, it's so alligator cracked, if we're going to go out there, we're going to patch this road. It's tough to decide where do we start, where do we end? If there's a pothole out there, we have a bobcat grinder and go out there and grind it and want to patch the road. At some point in time, you can't go out there in the middle of the day and just dig up the whole road to patch a pothole. And so this is the point, a good example of it's beyond its life. It's ready for reconstruction. So it's gone past the chip seal, the patching, the overlay. It's ready for reconstruction. Again, more expensive than we would like to see it. Sidewalks. As this is the roadway network, not just roads. Sidewalk is part of the roadway network. And we do a lot of work with sidewalks. We're a walkable city. We try to be a more walkable city. You got to have good sidewalks. In our budget, operations budget, it shows up here, we have $50,000 a year. The good portion of that goes towards grinding. We have a pretty serious grinding program. As an example, last year, we just did around Meridian to like All Saints to the Gold Lot. It was $32,000 to grind just that little section of the road. We do like 600 and some grinds last year. So we spent a lot of time and effort grinding roads. And what happens is, we go and grind them, they will shift and lift, we go grind them again. And so it's something that we got to do better at, fixing these sidewalks. It's important. It helps people get around town.
I have a question. Can you grind asphalt?
We can grind asphalt. Yes, we can. We actually have bobcat grinders that can grind out a lot of asphalt.
How about the trail? The
Yes.
public trail for bicycles?
We've actually patched in public trail in the past.
But can you grind it?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I was going to say, I almost lost my teeth the other day on the trail between basically the 512 overpass going that direction towards Sumner. There are so many bumps on that trail, almost making it unusable.
Cody, we'll catch up with Cody.
Yeah, seriously, I'll tell you, if you could, I'll pull a truck up and I'll get the grinder. I'll go do it myself.
And we've been there. We've been out there. We go out there, we can grind it up and patch it.
Yeah, please do. Like I say, I got to keep my teeth, but
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. Good sidewalks. We would like to be, we have a lot of good sidewalks in-house. We have the ability to our own city crews to go out there and move sidewalks and put them back. And so we're getting better and better at it. We're trying to stretch that dollar, do what we can do with what we have. But it's something we definitely have to work harder on. A lot of times we focus on new sidewalks, and ultimately, one of my thoughts is we want to take care of what we have along with making new sidewalks. We have a lot of sidewalks. We have 184 miles of sidewalks. Our goal is to have sidewalks on both sides of the road. So we're 100 miles short of that goal. So we'll get there someday, but we have to take care of the sidewalks we have. Beyond sidewalks, we have signals. Signals are one of those kind of those hidden gems we have where people, they drive around the town. They don't notice how the signals are aging, what they look like. We have a lot of old infrastructure in the city as far as signals go. Part of our operations budget is a signal maintenance, and it's kind of an unfunded section. So if we had the Blue Gate, we had a car hit the Blue Gate signal pole and got knocked over. And so for one thing, you just can't go to Home Depot and buy a signal pole. That pole was ordered, I believe, in April, and it has yet to be delivered. And so it's something like, if something happens, we have to be able to repair that. I believe that pole was $38,000 just for the one, just to buy the pole, not to have it taken down, removed, put back up. It's a big expense. 12th and Pioneer is a great project. 12th and Pioneer, we're not done yet, but we're $1.5 million roughly for that one little signal. And so as we talk about aging infrastructure, it's something we have to start budgeting for, and it helps the traffic movement. We talk about, efficiencies, moving traffic, getting them through town, being efficient. Signals is a big part of that, so you got to work on it with the signals. The cost of deferring maintenance. What does deferring maintenance look like? This is an example of a sidewalk that we pretty much can no longer maintain. We have a grinder, and we've ground this section, we've patched this section, and it's kind of beyond its life. We do the best we can do. That picture of the signal pole is 5th and West Pioneer. That one's in the works to get replaced. But a lot of these things are old and aging, and you just can't be able to replace them. So we have to plan and schedule and get these things ahead of the curve before they get hit or they fall down and get destroyed. It's really hard to replace these signal systems and these poles. That's all I have. Any questions? If not, I'll hand it over to Hans.
Okay, any questions? Hearing none, go ahead. Thank you.
All right, Hans Hunger, city engineer. So when we're looking at all these costs for the street system, we're really trying to focus on what does it take to maintain what we already have. And, it's complicated, but you can break it down into the different types of treatment, how much your assets are, how much you have, how often you should treat it. So when we look at these ways of preserving our system and just maintaining what we have, we look at, $700,000 a year for overlays. If we get up to that ideal situation and we're just maintaining what we have, the chip seal program, the sidewalk maintenance, and this is really focused on just improving what we have, not adding to the system, which frequently when you're hearing from me, I'm talking about capital improvements and projects that we're improving. So this is much more trying to just break down what will it cost to maintain the system. When you add all these things up, and it's a rough estimate because we're looking at this at a high level, it's $3 million per year to really know what you have, know how often it has to be maintained, be more proactive instead of reactive all the time, and be able to have your system working okay. Now you compare that to what the current budget funding is of 1.1 million. And that's, as Scott said, that's often pulled other directions, to take that money away. And the 1.1 million has been there since I've been here in 2017, as far back as anybody can know. That's 1.1 million has been budgeted for that. Now, when you consider the cost increases that have gone up over that time period, it really is starting to show on the wear of the system there, that eventually the deferred maintenance will start to reveal itself. And one of the things that you saw on that curve for the maintenance that I really want to emphasize is a lot of the wear and tear you see on this system is almost invisible to the naked eye. At first, that curve is very gentle, and it seems like, okay, we didn't maintain this, but it's holding, and you're not seeing the degradation that's happening. And then you hit the steeper part of the curve, and that's the part where everything seems to be showing up all at once because you deferred the maintenance, and you're quickly going down to the place where you have to reconstruct. And so what this is trying to emphasize, what would it take to avoid that steeper part of the curve and stay up on the cheaper part of the curve? And then, even in some time periods and stuff, when on tight budgets, that 1.1 million can even be stretched to have to be used other places and stuff. And that has happened in the past where we haven't been able to, fully contribute the 1.1 million. So really the benefit we see with the Transportation Benefit District is streets are a major asset for us. The community, everybody uses these streets. we want to propose a designated funding source that's kind of locked in for our city to be able to maintain the street system and maintain what we have. And so that's really where I see the big benefit that we're locking in right now with the transportation benefit district is if it's an important asset, just like our utilities, where you have designated funding for utilities and it can't be moved to somewhere else, even despite that need being really important. It's not competing against all the other competing needs of the city, and that's the advantage there. And so that's all been just about talking about maintaining what we have. And as I said, most of the time when you see me up here, I'm talking about improvements, and we have lots of discussions about improvements that we want to see the city. And that's above and beyond. That is competing sometimes with the 1.1 million, but as Barbara showed, at times we're designating 700,000 for that, but the next 2 years it'll be zero for that fund. That money is used in a variety of different ways, and there's no really way to put it, an accurate number to how much do you need for the improvement of the system, because that varies by how many projects do you want to see and what's the scope of those projects. When you look at something like a Shaw Road down the hill and what it takes to widen a 2-lane road to a 5-lane road with a creek going through it and stuff, I mean, it gets very expensive fast. It's eye-opening and stuff. But so those improvements get very expensive fast. And sometimes some of the maintenance stuff, if we defer it too long, that shifts over to an improvement, to do where we have to run it through the capital improvement section there. Our funding sources for the improvements, they're somewhat thin too. We have traffic impact fees that we charge every new development that adds trips to our roadway network. They have to pay a traffic impact fee for that. But realistically, that traffic impact fee is based on a study, and the study is based on road improvements that are adding capacity to the system. So that money is supposed to go towards those improvements to help pay for them there. We have the local improvement financing tool LIFT, $1 million per year. Very grateful for that. But you also got to realize that is geographically constrained. It can only be spent in a certain area, basically around our regional growth areas there, downtown and the mall, those areas for improvements to the system there. And we've used it for quite a different improvements, not always towards streets. We funded quite a bit of the lavatories in the park with that financing tool there. We have tier 3 funding that the council is well aware of when that's available. And then the streets capital fund, that's the 700,000 in 2024, but zero in 2025 and 26. And then especially for streets, we rely heavily on grants. And there's a lot of good money that we've been able to leverage with grants, but important to recognize with grants is, one, they almost all come with a match. So you got to have enough money set aside to match the grant and leverage your funds there. And I always caution a little bit on grants. Grant programs have things that they're trying to do. And so if you as a city are saying, this is the important thing for us, well, somewhat you're turning that over when it becomes more dependent that you have to have a grant to fund this project. You're more dependent on what was important to the granting agency. Sometimes that marries up and stuff. Sometimes it doesn't. The project is most important to you over here, but the funding, the granting funding is saying, no, this is a better fit for that project there. So you don't want to become too dependent on grants there. So with all these, above that $3 million per year, you've got to think about how are you funding the improvements that you want to fund through there. So with that, I will turn it back over to Salika.
So with this slide here, Council, should you decide to move forward with the TBD process, we wanted to give you a sense of what that process looks like, what the timeline is. So the first circle that you see on the very left is today's informational session. And it will, of course, come back to you for discussion during our budget sessions. After that, the formation itself requires a public hearing and an ordinance. After which the next phase would be assumption of the district. When a TBD is formed, the city and the district are two separate legal entities. But there is RCW 0.74 that allows for the city to absorb the district and to assume its powers and obligations, which essentially means you don't have to have separate meetings. You can conduct the benefit district business during a regular council meeting. So to do that, to assume the district requires another public hearing, so a resolution to set a public hearing, and then the public hearing, and an ordinance to assume the district. And then finally, the funding, which requires another ordinance. So the entire process, if we followed it, if you followed this, would be through the end of November.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that outline. Are there any questions? Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Talika. Thank you, staff. I appreciate the information and the proposal brought forward. I'll go ahead and say it. I will not support a vehicle license fee, period, full stop. I recognize that is not what you are recommending, but I will say that now. If I did my understanding and my comprehension is somewhat accurate, it seems to me that if we go the 0.1% tax increase, we would be the second highest sales tax in Pierce County at 10.2. I am very sensitive to that, given the current economy, but I'm going to put that to the side for now. I would like to go to Hans, what you said about grants, or whomever would like to answer. So how often are we going after grants for streets or transportation projects?
I would probably say that at least 60% of our projects have some sort of grant funding, and most of them have multiple grant funding there. It's hard to get enough funding without the grants. So we use Department of Ecology grants for water quality retrofits on our roadways, where we'll take a normal road and turn it porous there for water quality purposes there. We have been successful with PSRC grants for improvement projects there and preservation projects for asphalt overlays and stuff there. And then we've tried, the last 2 years for larger federal grants. We have received a FEMA grant for a water tower seismic retrofit, and we haven't been totally unsuccessful, but it is more challenging. You hear about a lot of the large funding at the federal level. Those grants are extremely competitive and hard to get. And so twice now we've applied for Shaw Road down the hill and not been successful.
And so it does sound like that we particularly focus on state grants, and just because of sometimes the challenges that exist with federal grants.
I would say we know those programs better and we're able to be more competitive with the state grants. Yes.
I know that I have said this many times before, but I do want to encourage us to consider going after federal grants, and in particular, continuing to think about projects in which we can submit to our congressional delegation for their independent or their own office congressional project funding. So each of the senators and each member of the House have their own process where organizations can apply for funding, formerly known as earmarks. And I do believe that that is an avenue that we could do better in. And so I just really want to advocate for grants.
Okay.
I recognize the challenges that exist with grants, and to your point, how extremely competitive they are. And then following that, also what you have to do for reporting purposes once you receive the grant money and how your project is going in implementation. But I have seen for a long time the ways in which state and federal grant money has been incredibly beneficial to various levels or organizations at the local level. So I just had to say that.
And Councilmember Adler, you did remind me, we did try for one of those, I can't remember what the new term is, earmarks, but for Meeker Festival streets, where we're doing the design of it now. We've gone from the conceptual design. We were successful in securing some funding through that.
I'm familiar. Thank you. Thank you. So my next question is, does a priority list exist for the projects that we have, particularly the ones that are in the pipeline that are really major and could be in jeopardy if, perhaps we did not implement the district, and, those would then be taken off the table or pushed back?
I would probably characterize it a little differently, because what we're primarily looking at for the district is securing funding to maintain our roads properly there. I would look towards the capital facilities plan, which is our 6-year plan that does kind of sequence down projects in their priority there. It gets tweaked every year as new projects get added on, or some get deprioritized, or the schedule slides because of lapse of funding and stuff. But that's where I would look to say some of these projects are not going to have enough funding to move forward, or they're going to be even more reliant on securing a grant, and then whatever match is required for that.
Thank you for that. Do our streets then, or sidewalks, and perhaps I missed this, and if so, I apologize. Is there a grade level to each of them? So like, okay, this street and these sidewalks are at F, so they would be top of the list of total repair or total replacement, what have you, not the piecemeal that we just were walked through.
I'll turn over to Scott, because we do a road rating that I think it kind of describes what you're talking about.
Thank you.
The road rating, it's the 100 to 0. So Ken said our average is 74, 71. And so we look at road ratings, and we have actual asset software that kind of directs us and gives us cost projections for what maintenance items will work. Part of the goal is not to knock down Hans, is the goal to, spend our less amount of money up front and not get to Hans's group. If we can spend, say, $1 million now, that saves $5 million down the road. And that's kind of what I'm looking for, is to get it before it goes to CIP. That's a big part of the story we're talking about here.
Do you have a ballpark of how many, I'm going to just refer to them as projects, because I think that that's easier frame of mind, at least for myself. The number of projects in which would be top tier, right? That we would need, that exists to go out and to fix.
On the Cons recommend the 24, 29 project list, there's probably about 30 street projects on there, in different classifications.
Okay. And should this benefit district not exist, if we don't implement the district, would those projects, would they remain priority?
They would. The priority is, a lot of times the priority is the condition of the road. And so it will actually get worse if we don't fund this and we don't maintain our roads. The need and the priority of fixing roads will get greater. And so we have a score of our roads right now, and actually our score has gone down 4 points the last several years, because we're not maintaining as well as we could. And so if we defer maintenance costs now, which we talked about, you don't see it, you can drive down the road, it seems great. But once you pass a point, it's beyond grinding and overlay. Now you're talking reconstruction, deep patching. So you're more or less just, I don't want to use the term, but you're pushing it down for someone else to pay for it at a much higher rate. And so we kind of say we want to catch it before Hans gets it.
Right.
I'm cheaper than Hans.
Right. I'm just trying to understand if this district the benefit district is not implemented, then what happens to all of these projects, right? Like, to your point, do we kick the can down the road?
The projects will be there.
yeah.
Still have a list. They're not gonna fall off the radar.
They
It's just
worsen.
Trying to find funding to get these projects. And a lot of these grants that we get for, we're currently doing one on West Valley, a federal funded grant. And in that grant, it talks about using that 1.1 as matching funds. And so it's great to get a grant, but the money we have set aside for chip seal preservation goes towards funding these bigger projects.
Right.
And so that's part of the issue with that.
But they worsen. The infrastructure worsens.
It does.
Yeah.
And in the curve Ken showed, the more you go, the faster that drops off. You had some comment?
If I might add on a comment, if this transportation benefit district doesn't go through, it has broader ramifications than just with streets. It's our general fund. So we would have to go take a serious look at our general fund and figure out where to cut out $2 million a year. Streets could potentially be a portion of that. I would imagine it's not all of it, but it's that whole broader challenge of the general fund as a whole as well.
Thank you. My last question is, with the benefit district, if implemented, am I correct in understanding and assuming that that would include maintenance of curbs, including painting and updating of curbs and street traffic painting,
You are correct.
marking?
So operations and maintenance would be included in a benefit district. So we would continue to do annual striping like what you're inquiring about.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Adler. Councilmember Whitting.
I am certainly feel a need to take care of our infrastructure. On the other hand, I'm concerned about the need for this special tax district. You know, when I came on council a few years ago, we had a $3 million of tier 3 every year, and seems like our financial condition has deteriorated in the meantime. So I need to understand a lot better how that transition has taken place. We've done some things that needed to be done, but it seems like we're having to expand our taxes, and this, you know, inflation's been a real challenge the last few years, but the inflation should also help our sales tax revenues, which is what we're talking about here. So I just I'm going to be looking for a lot more analysis of this so that I can understand why we need to impose this additional tax and in order to support our infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Whitting. Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo the comments of my two previous colleagues, and I certainly understand the need and I've had this presentation, I don't know how many times on the streets, but this narrative applies to all 11 departments in the city. And the staff will remember, some of you, that I personally do not like the piecemeal. I appreciate the presentation, but I want to see the needs of all our departments. If you recall, 2 years ago, I voted against the budget because of a lot of these things. We increased, with full implementation of the utilities, when that is fully implemented, the utility increases, which funded all of the projects in a CIP from a study. It will be $700 a year to our taxpayers. We also, definitely needed a public safety building alternative. So another rough estimate, $200. So within the last 2 years, we've increased the cost of living on our residents $900. And so I really need to understand more about this and what it's really difficult to say what the impact would be, but we need to be also concerned with affordability for our residents in this economy. So the other thing we've heard all year is the concern about the decrease in sales tax revenue due to car sales, which has been really nerve-wracking. And with, as Councilmember Adler said, us being in the second highest sales tax rate now, if we implement this, new cars cost less in Puyallup. That marketing is in jeopardy. And so while this may only be a minimal purchase on a new car, if it costs the marketing of the car dealers and it costs us across the board in car sales, if they choose to go to somewhere with a lower sales tax increase, I want to know what that does to our budget. That, because I've been hearing about that all year. And as far as the grants, I've been advocating since I've been going to NLC. We need a federal lobbyist. If we want to go after these grants, we need a federal lobbyist. This council also hired a grant coordinator. We added that position to go after these funds. We haven't had an update on that. I would like to see how successful that has been. And part of the reason was all the requirements of these grants. So we added a position to facilitate this, going after the federal dollars. We knew that that was coming down the pipeline. So I'm not ready to, I'm uncertain. I appreciate the presentation. I am all about maintaining our infrastructure, but I want to hear the library and the parks and legal and, finance. We've added so much. I think we've added more taxes in the last biennium than my whole time on council. And I appreciate that things have gone up, that we are a bigger city. We have things we didn't fund in the past, but is this the right time? I'm really struggling with this. So I'm with Councilmember Whitting. I want to see more analysis of this. And I specifically want to understand the impact to the car dealers. Like I said, every month we hear about that sales tax revenue. So what do we expect this to do if we blow up the cars cost less in Puyallup? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. By the way, your request is noted on the update on our grant writer and to see what type of productivity that has brought. That will be done. We'll make sure we get an update on that. Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. I'm assuming this is a discovery time. And so I don't want to just assume that this is the worst idea that you've ever brought before City Council. And I definitely resonate with comments that my colleagues have brought. But I just kind of want to play devil's advocate just for the sake of discovery. And I'm looking at the taxes in Pierce County divided up by the cities. Tacoma is 10.3, Puyallup is 10.1, Bonnie Lake is 10.2, Spanaway is 10.1, Lakewood is 10.1, in some areas 10.3, closer to Tacoma. Puyallup, let's see. So it's University Place is 10.3, Sumner is 10.2, and then the further you get away from city life and into more country type cities, it's 8.1. So one of the things that I appreciate that you brought up was that we're not raising taxes on our citizens per se. It's not all the weight on people in Puyallup. It's the people that are also coming into Puyallup because we are a transient city. And so I think I just want to add perspective to, obviously we're not the only city. And then if I were to actually do the math, it's $1 per 100. It's $10 per 1,000. So I'm not sure how much I can lean in on in support of the cars cost less in Puyallup argument because and I could be wrong. I'm just saying I'm not really seeing that as a massive impact on that particular comment. So I guess I don't like raising taxes. Nobody likes raising taxes. We have to face the inevitability of what we're being faced with. We have a $4.4 million deficit. This will bring in 3 million to free up, but it also says, hey, we're going to secure this amount for our streets. So I'm not saying I'm for or against. I just want to bring other information to the forefront so that we can process together further. So I'm not ready to make a yay or nay on this. I'm just saying, I don't think it's as detrimental as what I totally hear my colleagues say. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for those comments. Let me just state that it's good that you bring this forward now because we're going to be entering into the budget for this year. And as the council member mentioned, we have a shortage that we're going to have to address one way or another through cuts or through some sort of revenue. Keep in mind this, Councilmember Dorr, you did mention the fact about how much I believe utility rates, things of that sort that we have put on. But keep in mind when it comes to property taxes just by themselves, this council has been, I think, fairly conservative in the last 7 years. We've raised property tax about 4.5% over that entire period. So in some respects, we are, and Councilmember Gilliam just kind of iterated how many other jurisdictions are at that sales tax revenue, that sales tax rate. So I think we have tried to be as conservative as we can, but I do share your concern with the burdens that go on to our taxpayers. But we're about ready to now go into our whole discussion on budget. Councilmember Dorr, I would appreciate if we just don't engage in a very long discussion today, because this was just, I'll allow you to do that. But keep in mind, really, I want us just to gain information today because we have so much time ahead of us to discuss about the budget particulars and how we're going to make it through this. I would rather save the discussion for then, but out of courtesy, if you insist, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, it is my responsibility and to my taxpayers, to my constituents to advocate for what I see. And I disagree with Councilmember Gilliam on the numbers that she just put forth. If you look at the information sent by the city manager, we have Gig Harbor is 8.9, City of Fife is 10.1, City of Roy is 8.2, Town of Wilkinson 8.1, City of DuPont 9.5, Town of Wilkerson 8.1, City of DuPont, did I already say that? Lakewood 10.1, Tacoma 10.3. That puts us, we will be at 10.2. City of Auburn, which a big chunk is King County, is at 10.2. University Place 10.1. Pierce County unincorporated, a bunch of, so we have City of Sumner 9.5, City of Bonnie Lake 9.5, City of Boarding 9.5, City of Edgewood 10.1. So I respectfully disagree with the opinion that this would not have an impact on cars cost less in Puyallup. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll have that discussion. We'll have that debate. I think that the numbers that Councilmember Gilliam did note, City of Tacoma, City of Auburn, I think she noted those. Maybe there's a difference in estimates or a difference in what at least we each believe. City of Sumner was one. But I think there's plenty of time, Councilmember Dorr, to go ahead and get more facts on this. And we are going to have so many public hearings on this budget before we pass. I think all views will be made, and I think we all share your fiscal concern. So with that, we're now going to move on. Unless you do want to discuss any more, I suggest we save that for the actual budget negotiations or discussions, and that this was a moment for us to be introduced to these issues. Councilmember Dorr, I'll give you one more bite at the apple, but that is it. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I appreciate that. I think for letting me do my job. I would request that city staff has a meeting with the car dealers to understand the impacts. Because again, if we lose the regular rates of sales that we've already experienced the loss of revenue over this year, If we lose that marketing, I want to know what that does to our overall sales tax collection that it goes into our general fund. So I
Fair.
would ask that staff meet with the car dealers. Thank you.
Thank you. I will just make a note on that as I meet with the car dealers regularly and I will go over those issues too. I think it's our job to do that as council members too. So with that, let's move on to other business. 7A, Good Samaritan Hospital Master Plan and Draft Environmental Impact Statement update, please. Well, welcome. Haven't seen you in a while.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Chris Beal. I'm with the city's planning division. So tonight we're planning on providing you a brief update to the Good Samaritan Master Plan or Hospital Master Plan. This is kind of a mid-cycle or mid-review check-in with City Council. Previous presentation was in January, if folks remember that. So to recap from the January presentation, if you can't remember that far back, which I don't blame you, Good Sam Hospital Multicare is proposing a new 20-year master plan approval that would govern the future build-out and expansion of the campus. The previous master plans and environmental impact statements for Good Sam were quite a while ago. The first major one was in 2003 with a significant amendment in 2007, and those were 10-year approvals that are now expired. Master plans are fairly unique. It is a permit type that actually goes through the Planning Commission City Council process. It's probably the only land use permit that does that. These are typically involved with much larger campuses. Folks that were on council about 2 years ago will probably remember the Pierce College master plan that came through. That's probably the most recent example that we've had. We've also looked at master plans for other campuses in years past. Far back, the high school, Washington State University actually had a draft master plan that didn't get finished as well, but we've had a few over quite a long span of time. So just for some key timelines, I won't read through all of this, but right around the summer of 2022, about 2 years ago, Multicare had announced the expansion of the campus with the addition of a brand new patient care tower. At that point in time, they basically approached DPS about the permitting process. We conducted a neighborhood meeting and issued a determination of significance, which starts the environmental impact statement process for this project. We also held a public agency meeting for affected public agencies that were part of the EIS notification at the end of 2022. And then in the winter or first quarter of 2023, Multicare submitted their complete application for the master plan, and the city also initiated public notice through our standard notice of application process. In the spring of 2023, we provided an initial planning commission presentation just to orient them on the application itself and the fact that we were working on it. Again, I actually missed this bullet point, sorry about that. But in January of 2024, we gave the city council a presentation just as an overview. It was a similar presentation as the one planning commission. This summer, the planning commission did do a site tour, so that was an exterior walkthrough to kind of orient themselves with the campus and where the improvements would be planned. Just last month, we provided a much more in-depth presentation to the Planning Commission, and that's leading up to an anticipated Planning Commission public hearing next month in October. So if folks are not familiar with the Multicare campus, this is sort of a Google Earth looking to the north or northeast. This is the entire campus essentially for the Good Samaritan Hospital. The large buildings, obviously the Dally Tower, which is an 8-story patient care tower building. It also has their emergency room services within that building. Other significant buildings on the campus, you'll see the medical office building out on the front on 15th Avenue. There's parking and a turnaround for the Dally Tower here. The emergency room services are in the lower portion. The far sort of northwest corner, there's a central utility plant and another medical office building. And then there's various parking lots on the south side of 15th Avenue. There is the Cancer Care Center and the Child's Therapy Center as well. Most of the development in the master plan is actually going to be located north of 15th Avenue, so the properties to the south are not affected. This is just an overview, overhead view of the existing conditions on the campus. This is the phase plan. The Good Samaritan Hospital actually has to go through the State Department of Health for what they call a certificate of need. The best way I could describe that is sort of like a land use approval equivalent type of process. With Department of Health, they have to provide a study that demonstrates the need for the community. That study demonstrated a need for about 250, just shy of 250 additional care beds in the community by 2036. Obviously, Good Sam serves a much larger area than just the city, so that regional need is there. The existing Dally Tower is 360 patient beds. The new PCT, or Patient Care Tower acronym, is 160 new licensed inpatient beds, plus they'll be transferring 30 existing observational beds. So these are beds that are provided typically for less than a day. Those are going to be transferred over. So when the new care tower opens, it would be 160 net new beds plus the 30 transferred from the Dally Tower. There would be a shell floor. This is pretty similar to the way they built out the Dally Tower. They built out a shell floor for unlicensed beds. So these are beds that would be future licensed by Department of Health for an additional 40. So the total count for the new patient care tower would be 200 new inpatient beds and then the 30 that are transferred. And then the other phases, they have 4 phases, although there's sub phases within each of those. Phase 1, for example, has numerous construction projects planned within that. The care tower, the parking structure that would be associated with the care tower, and the utility plant would essentially all kind of do the lift at the beginning. There would be the shell build out that would be part of the care tower, but at a future construction date. And then they're going to do a small 2,000 square foot lobby expansion, essentially where if you had to go to the emergency room in the past 3 to 4 years, you would have noticed a tent on that lower side that was installed during COVID. I believe the tent was actually just recently taken down. So that tent area would essentially be sort of a lobby expansion. It's not an expansion of the emergency room capacity. It's essentially sort of a efficiency type of improvement that would make permanent where the tent was before. The future phases for phase 2 would be the first medical office building and the parking structure associated with that. Phase 3 would be a second medical office building. And then further out in the master plan build out would be a central support tower. So that would essentially be located just north of the care tower and the pavilion buildings that are on site currently. And then an expansion of the Dally Tower off of 3rd Street. And we'll go through the site plan images quickly in the next couple of slides. So this kind of gives an architectural side view or rendering or isometric of where the new care tower is going to go. So the care tower, if you're out on the campus right now, there's actually a vacated city street that runs north of 15th Avenue, which is 5th. That curves around to another vacated street, which is 14th Avenue. When you're out there, they kind of look like public streets because they used to be public streets, but they're vacated and part of the overall campus. Those would sort of be reoriented or reorganized around a larger footprint here. So when you're out at that campus, you'll see just kind of a really large grassy area. There's a lower courtyard that's got a fountain and some seating down here. That new care tower is essentially going to go east of the Dally Tower here. What this image also shows is option A and option B for the parking garage that's going to be associated with the Dally Tower. This kind of leaves the option open for sort of a footprint A and footprint B, which is undecided at this point. So this just shows you the overhead view of that same image. The second phase essentially would be a medical office building up at 5th and 15th with an associated parking garage to support that medical office building. That medical office building would be about 100,000 square feet, so similar in size to that existing medical office building just across the street. Phase 3, the second medical office building would be built essentially right along 15th Avenue, just to the east of the first medical office building. And then phase 4, I think these are 2 different sub phases. There's a central support tower, which goes here, which is located between the old hospital and what they call the pavilion buildings, which are patient supportive services, not care beds, and the Dally Tower and the new tower. And then the final phase would be an expansion off of 3rd Street of the Dally Tower. When you're on that side, you'll see sort of loading docks and a couple of driveway entries right now. There would be likely a multi-story addition off that west side of the Dally Tower as a final phase. So this is just the full image of all the improvements. And an isometric of the full improvements. Some of the comment themes, obviously, we've done quite a bit of public outreach. We've done at least 2 mailers. We've done at least 2 public meetings, as well as the 3 planning commission meetings that we've had on this process. We haven't received many comments from members of the public so far. This actually is one of the larger, well, it's the largest application type that we do a notice for. So we do a 1/4 mile radius for mailed public notification for all master plans. We haven't really received much notice or much feedback from the members of the public so far, although we haven't held a public hearing. We have heard some concerns. We mentioned this in the January presentation around capacity issues with the ambulance bays for the emergency room department, EMS movements on the site itself, as well as EMS parking and roadway improvements. And a lot of this came from our partners at Central Pierce Fire and Rescue. Central Pierce is not the only fire and rescue service that uses the emergency bays, but they serve our immediate area. So they've been kind of our conduit or point of contact for the EMS and first responder community in that area. So Good Sam has had multiple meetings and has actually looked at numerous approaches to addressing the ambulance bay improvements. I believe in January, we really were in the initial phases of some of that discussion with the staff at Central Pierce and didn't really have any resolution on that. I will say Good Sam has looked at numerous different options, and we've come to a pretty good conclusion with Central Pierce about a phased approach to improving the capacity within the ambulance bays itself. We've done site visits, actually a couple of different site visits. Multicare provided a few different alternatives that were designed by an architecture team. And we've come to sort of a phased approach to do a phase 1 expansion and a phase 2 expansion at a later date, likely tied to a future construction phase. There's also going to be some on-street parking. I think that's part of an amendment package that you all are considering to some of our parking regulations. But one of those things within that was our EMS provider community wanted some street parking on 3rd designated for fire or first responders only. And that'll actually be part of an associated amendment that I think you guys are considering here in the next month or 2. We're also obviously working on an environmental impact statement that's parallel to the master plan that goes through Planning Commission. We did issue that again in the end of 2022 to really get this process started. Obviously, EISs are complex. They take quite a bit of time, but we are getting pretty close to issuing a draft EIS. So these are the areas of the environment that we're studying in that: earth, plants and animals, air quality, noise, land use. We're also looking at viewshed and aesthetics analysis, public services, public utilities, and transportation traffic impacts. So just some of the key issues, obviously traffic impacts are going to be fairly significant and key as part of that environmental impact statement. We're still studying that at this phase. Like I said, we're sort of in a midway phase. We don't yet have a final traffic report from the consultant team that's working on this. We've seen some preliminary results that obviously show fairly significant traffic impacts on the roadways that serve the development. And there's going to be a package of mitigation measures that will be associated with that. It's really all I can say at this point, mostly because we don't have a final report yet and we don't have a draft EIS issued with that mitigation identified. Obviously, we also have a public service and utility section in the EIS. Significantly related to that is sanitary sewer. Obviously, hospitals create a lot of sanitary sewer effluent, so a lot of that discharge. We've also got some issues just in the immediate surrounding area with sanitary sewer pipe capacity that is actually going to be addressed through a capital project that Hans's work group is designing right now, sort of an immediate sewer project underneath 512 that will help serve this development. We're also looking at just water demand and water flow usage. Obviously, a hospital also uses a lot of water and has a lot of need for fire protection services. So we're looking at the improvements that are required as part of the improvement to the campus, particularly the patient care tower in those 2 areas. We're also just conducting staff review on the overall site plan itself. Things are in pretty good shape at the moment. We've got some issues with building and fire code compliance just with the existing structures on the site and the proposed new structures. We're doing some pretty detailed work around exiting plans, fire lanes, fire turning movements, radio coverage to adjacent structures and adjacent buildings are all pretty key issues that we're still studying and working out with the applicant right now, as well as street frontage improvements. Obviously, this campus has got a lot of street frontages on public roadways, and we're coming up with a phasing plan with the applicant for potential street improvements as well. And then one key issue that comes up with master plans, and one of the adjacent reasons why master plans go through city council, is master plans are afforded the ability to define specific development standards for the type of development, as long as it's consistent with our comp plan and consistent with environmental impact statements or any kind of SEPA document that goes with it. So in this case, we don't typically allow 8-story buildings in the med zone, but under master plans, under previous iterations of the master plan for the med zone, and the way that we anticipate medical development through a hospital in the med designation in the comp plan, we do allow that under particular scenarios, like with a master plan. Like I'd mentioned before, we are doing a fairly detailed post-development view simulation analysis. So essentially that takes some key observation points from public rights of way and visualizes through sort of a building massing software what the development's going to look like from those locations. And then we study that through an EIS. A lot of those things allow for customized development standards to be included in a master plan. So that's one of the things that you will also see within the master plan itself. Okay, so next steps. Again, mid-October, we anticipate a draft EIS being issued with a 30-day comment period. We have a planned public hearing date with the Planning Commission for the end of October. And we plan for the Planning Commission to make a recommendation to City Council by the end of the year on that. And then kind of the rough schedule moving forward from there, I would say Q1 of 2025, we'd be issuing a final EIS. And then right around Q1 or Q2, early Q2, we would be bringing back a final master plan to the City Council for a decision. And I think our last slide here, we've got a few links if folks wanted to scan those or take a look at them. Links to both our permit portal, and then we also have a dedicated project website on the city's page that's a little more user-friendly than just the permit portal. So if anybody wanted to scan those to take a look at any of the materials, you can. And that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. Chris, thanks for the presentation. I really appreciate it. I am aware of the negotiations of the phased-in project for the ambulance bay. And as I said previously, that it's really important because if our ambulances are stuck in a bay, that puts public safety at risk. People are not able to they're not able to get out and respond to calls. So my question is, if this phased-in approach to addressing that issue is agreed upon, and to my knowledge at this point, the fire, at least Central Pierce, I don't know about the rest of the fire districts that transport there, are supportive of that. Is that a part of the master plan, and is it enforceable? I mean, is it a requirement?
It'll either be a condition as part of this, or it will be a condition in the EIS. We haven't decided which side of that yet. The EIS does study this issue and does disclose the need for additional services over the time period. Essentially, we pulled call data from Southside 911 and demonstrated that the call data has obviously gone up, which means calls for service and more people being moved in through the ER and through the ambulance bays, which essentially means that there's an environmental basis for a mitigation measure. I think it's probably likely that it will be included in the EIS. Right now, the form of the quote unquote agreement is essentially written. I mean, we've had emails, we've had a few meetings with, particularly with Kevin, the assistant chief, Kevin Bearden. And I think you're right. I think we've got a preliminary agreement on the approach. How we memorialize that, I think there's different options. We could condition it through the master plan, or it's more likely that it'll be a condition in the EIS.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good to see you, Chris. Thank you for the thorough presentation. I have a question just because I always like to ensure that folks understand the impact that the health system has, positive impact that the health system has here in our community. And I know that this is not, your day-to-day work is not talking about the health system and their level of service here in Puyallup. And I don't have the numbers or the data off the top of my head, but Do you have any of that in your notes or anything that you could say just in terms of, certainly they are growing. Certainly we are an anchor for medical services and certainly emergency services for the east side of the county. And so, I always just like to highlight, especially, and hopefully you, Chris, will help me or one of my colleagues. Good Sam Hospital right here in Puyallup, Washington was, I believe, the 4th or 2nd most or the busiest emergency department in the entire country. And so I think that that's just really reflective of the growth that's happening here and frankly, the care that is provided at the health system, consistently. So do you have any of those numbers or data points to share? Just because I do think that they are helpful when you're thinking of, what they want to do with their master plan.
I don't have them in front of me. I will say that we did have a preliminary scope to study sort of the economic impacts of the hospital's expansion and their campus and the existing operations. We actually haven't really gone down the path of executing that agreement with Multicare because Multicare believes they have most of the data available, but I don't think we've received that quite yet. We could ask them to provide that as a response to your question.
That's all right. Thank you. I was mostly thinking of, they at one point, and I do believe it was in their presentation in January, it was, last year we had X many visits or this many people visited this area, right? And so I always just think that it's really important to put that into perspective because I do think that most people traveling on Meridian just think of the traffic and that east side turn off of Meridian. But I was just curious if maybe you had those, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Let me get this correct. Phase 1, you will be coming back Q1, Q2 to the council for approval of the master plan for phase 1, correct?
For the full master.
For the full
plan. It
master
would be
plan.
for all
Okay.
phases.
When will the shovel go in the ground on phase 1?
So Multicare has not told us when that's going to occur. There is a 2-year window for their certificate of need. They need to start construction on either the project that was approved or what they call an enabling project. The enabling project that they've settled on is actually an interior remodel to the Dally Tower, mostly to some ancillary facilities and their kitchen facility that will essentially be a shared, the 2 building walls will kind of share. So Department of Health has essentially granted an approval for them to work on an enabling project that would be an interior remodel. When the shovel hits the ground on the new care tower, we don't have a date on that.
Okay. Do you estimate 2026?
I would have to get back to you. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually meet with community members, civic groups, et cetera, and that is one of bouncing off Councilmember Adler's comments that that this is going to end up being a huge regional medical center for Washington State. It will cover all the medical care basically from here to Mount Rainier. And that certificate need that you mentioned is given by the legislature, but it also comes with obligations. In other words, they have that entire area, but they must be able to provide so many beds and other amenities that can demonstrate to the state that they can in fact service that area. Because if not, then they'll allow another hospital to be built up in Bonnie Lake, for example. And Councilmember Adler mentioned emergency rooms. Emergency rooms are really money losers for hospitals. So that's part of why the legislature gives them areas of need or kind of catchment, whatever the case may be, so that that they can service that whole area and they can have departments where they make money and departments where they lose money, but have a complete entity like the hospital. So I look forward to this being, from what I understand, this will be one of the largest regional healthcare systems in the state eventually. As far as hospital beds, you said that I think they currently have, was it 360?
360.
360, and you say they're going to add 250.
200 net new.
200?
249 is the need, 200 net new.
Okay, so where will that place us? Do you know as far as size of hospital in the state of Washington?
I don't know. I'd have
Okay,
to ask
that's again one of those points Councilmember Adler mentioned that would be good when we're talking to the community about what's going on there. It's just the gravity of it. Okay,
Agreed.
all right, thank you. Good presentation. Appreciate that. Any further questions? Okay, let's move on to the next item. Thank you. Arts and Culture Commission Work Plan Presentation. Eric, please. Eric Johnson.
Hey. All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Eric Johnson, Public Affairs Officer. And in addition to my regular duties, I'm also the staff liaison for the Arts and Culture Commission. And tonight, I'm going to provide you with an update on some of the things that the Commission has been doing, including the work plan. So first off, I want to recognize the current, the commission members. Here we have Chair Brad Pugh, who is here, who will go up in just a moment to say a few words. Vice Chair Amy Johnson, Commissioner Amora Busey, Commissioner Cody Esp, Paige Rooney, Jana Query, and Nicole Nicholson. We just have a few of those in that photo right there. And I also want to give a special call out to Becky Condra, who is standing next to the Eternal Heart sculpture right there. We like to think of her as an honorary member of the commission because she provides so many wonderful updates on behalf of Arts Downtown. And unfortunately, Commissioner Cody Esp and Jana Query have recently resigned from the commission, and so we'll be advertising those vacancies very soon. But before we move on, I just want to give Chair Brad Pugh a moment to come up and just say a few words on behalf of the commission.
Thank you, Eric. If it wasn't for Eric, I don't know what we do. He's a major part of our program, and of course, Dan Vessels was originally, and then we have Aaron Pretty, who keeps me in check as the chairperson, because sometimes running meetings is a little difficult. But I think we're doing some good work. It's a disappointment that we lost 2 members, because that's going to make our job a lot harder, but hopefully can find 2 really sweet members again. We're well-rounded. I'm visual arts. We have Commissioner Nicholson, who's our theater arts. We have Commissioner Bussey, who's our musical arts. Paige Rooney, who has a connection to the Western Washington Fair. And of course, Amy Johnson, who's been in their family, just, long-standing Puyallup contributor to the arts. Eric's update will show you that we're actually doing some work, and some really important work, and it's the fun thing. It's sort of different than, master plans and all those kind of things. So I'm glad to be up here and to let you know that we are still around, and we're still fighting for the arts and the culture in this town, and it's vibrant and it's growing. And so we're super excited to have this. So with that, I'll let Eric give you guys the update. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Commissioner Pugh. So I will go ahead and move on to the next slide. So really the big piece that the Arts and Culture Commission has been working on is their work plan. So the work plan, you can think of this as sort of an aspirational plan in nature of some of the high level things, aspirational things that they would like to see accomplished over the long term. And then in addition to that, it also identifies some low hanging fruit, if you will, some items that can be easily accomplished over the next year or so. So the work plan, the commission recently adopted at their July 2024 meeting, some of the high priority items that they have identified for next year include partnering more with the Northwest Sinfonietta. One of the ideas, we actually invited the Northwest Sinfonietta to one of our study sessions, and we came up with the idea of doing music nature walks on the loop trails. So essentially we'd have a sign in one of the entrances with a QR code where you could scan it, and it goes to the Northwest Sinfonietta's website, where you can download a playlist that's specially created just for that section of the loop trail. So just to kind of give you an idea of some of the ideas that they're kicking around here. One of the other high priority items is working with the library and Arts Downtown to create a public art gallery. So more specifically, a space where artists who would normally show in the hallways up here on the 5th floor could have more exposure for their artwork. And then also expanding the signal cabinet wrap program, which we'll talk a little bit more about the 4 submissions that were awarded at their meeting earlier this past month, and expanding that into the South Hill area of Puyallup. Some of the longer term items that are identified in the work plan, again, this is more aspirational in nature. It's not meant to be prescriptive, but just kind of, having an eye towards the future of, okay, like what are some things that we would like to do eventually over the course of the next 5, maybe 10 years, is looking at the skate park and how art could be integrated through that, hiring graffiti artists to come and do some sort of art event there, a public piano program in city parks. One of the commissioners felt that it would be great to get, either pianos or musical instruments available in some of the parks where, kids could play on those located next to the playground areas. Creating some sort of incentive program for downtown businesses to install art on their property. And then also integrating art into our downtown street furnishings. So as you all know, we recently are adopting the new street furnishing standards. And one of the things that the commission was very passionate about was, okay, once we've covered all the signal cabinet wraps, we only have so many signal cabinet wraps or signals that we can, do cabinet wraps. What's that next thing that we can do? Is it the public benches? Is it trash receptacles? So looking for ways to install art on those downtown street furnishings. Some other accomplishments beyond the work plan that they recently adopted. One of the first items was really more of a housekeeping item, was changing the monthly meeting date and time to be more accessible. So originally, the commission met on the last Friday of the month at 10 a.m. And the commission felt that that was not a conducive time for the public to come and provide public comment, and also for the commission members to be available. So they have changed that to the fourth Monday of the month at 4 p.m. And since then, we've gotten a lot more public comment from folks who are able to attend those meetings, and a lot more participation from the commission members as far as being able to attend those meetings. Another big accomplishment was strengthening communication with Arts Downtown. So having regular contact with them. I mentioned Becky Condra earlier, also Nicole Martineau, who's the president of Arts Downtown, getting regular updates from them at our regular meetings, and also attending their monthly meetings and making sure that we're both tracking. So that was a big accomplishment. We also worked on the commission's mission statement and vision statement. The old mission statement and vision statement was very long. It was several paragraphs long, and the commission felt very strongly we need to tighten that up, make it a lot more high level and more representative of where the commission is now. And they also worked with Arts Downtown on coordinating Eternal Hearts installation at Pioneer Park for the late, great Rosemary Eckerson. So worked very, very closely with Arts Downtown on getting that sited and installed. And then they also recently approved the 2024 signal cabinet wraps, which I will go to now. So the 2024 signal cabinet wrap artwork. So we sent a call to artists out in May 2024. We received 4 submissions from the call out. And since that was a relatively low number of submissions, the commission decided to open the vault and look at the 2023 submissions, which we had, I believe, over 30 submissions in that group. Really great submissions. So the commission decided to select 2 artworks from 2023 and then 2 from the 2024 submissions. And one of those 4 will be located at the spray park, the Puget Sound Energy electrical box that's there. So the first artwork that was selected was by artist Kelly Loney. I believe this is called Horsies. And then the second artwork that was selected is by artist Lisa Pope, and I believe this one is called Perspective. And the third artist, which I believe she is here in attendance, Yulia Isa. This is called Bee Hugger. And then the fourth one is also artist Kelly Loney, who submitted specifically for the Spray Park electrical box. And I believe this is called Bee Box. So kind of hearkening to the pollinators and us being a bee city. So next steps, the commission is going to be working on some of the items that I talked with you about this evening in the work plan. Staff is going to be working with our vendor to create the signal cabinet wraps, and then Public Works is going to be installing these in the following locations: the corner of West Pioneer and 5th Street Southwest, 15th Avenue Southwest and Fairview Drive, South Meridian and 23rd Avenue Southeast, and then of course the Spray Park electrical box. And then since we have one of our artists is here, and I understand that at least a couple of them are watching this out there virtually, I just wanted to take a moment to thank the artists for their hard work.
Thank you. Eric, if you could go back to the one where this lady who was here right there. This is yours? Well, let's give her an applause, folks. That's absolutely beautiful. The daffodils in the background. If you'd like to come up and speak to it, please do.
Just want to express my gratitude for the opportunity to share my art with the city. We moved into the city 3 years ago, and I immediately noticed how much attention is given to the arts. It is lovely to live in a city that takes time to consider the arts, and it just shows that the city is thriving. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Just so I know, that's a bee, right? Like a buzz bee, like, oh, wow. Okay. Excellent. Can't wait to see it. Okay. Proceed, Eric, or we.
That concludes.
Okay. Any questions? Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. Eric, great presentation. Brad Pugh, I am so glad that you are back on the Arts Commission. I was sad when that snafu happened, but you bring a great perspective. And I appreciate the rounding out of our art. So it's not just the visual. I really like that direction. So Eric, my question is, first, how are the signal boxes chosen, the actual physical locations? And I'm curious about expanding into South Hill, because when I first sponsored this as budget initiated, a council initiated item, it was supposed to be, and currently is, the same amount of signal wraps in each jurisdiction. Not that I'm complaining. You can signal wrap all the signal wraps in District 3. But can you explain those two things for me?
Yeah, so the first question, so those 4 locations, well, actually 3 of the locations were suggested by Public Works, and actually the 4th location was suggested by Councilmember Adler, who requested that one of them be the Spray Park electrical box. So those other 3 locations were suggested by Public Works, and then Public Works came to the Arts and Culture Commission and made those suggestions, and that was where the Arts and Culture Commission discussed that. One of the things that came out of that was making sure that whatever artwork was selected fit with that location, if that makes sense. So for instance, the one on Fairview Drive, we're going to put, I believe it's Kelly Loney's Horsies, because that has a fair theme to it. So making sure it has intentionality to that location, if that makes sense. And then to your second question, yeah, I think there was, I'll have to go back and look at my notes, but yeah, I think there was sort of an intention to sort of make everything equal across all the different districts as far as the locations. Because I know when it comes to selecting of them, because there's 4 every year, we try to do at least 1 per district. So.
Okay, so when Public Works is recommending those, is that based on the ones that are most likely to have graffiti, or what is that? How are they recommending that? Because
I think I'll have Ken Davies come up and answer that question.
Ken Davies, Public Works. So correct, we do look at the graffiti that we're experiencing throughout the city. And plus, in addition to that, we also look at whether we have a signal cabinet wrap that's going to be or a signal cabinet that's going to be replaced. So if it's going to be replaced, then we don't select that one, but it's kind of a combination of both. And as Eric said, we do try to balance it. So if one district has a little bit more in it, we go to the extra one goes to the other districts. So it's a balancing act as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I've had a constituent ask me about getting that one located to them, which I wouldn't support necessarily because it's not as visible, but I didn't have the answer as to how those locations were selected. And as far as the being relative, the Bradley Lake Park has the pig, and there is somebody that walks a pig at Bradley Lake Park. So I appreciate that that is the way that
Did they get
they're.
the idea from the artwork? Is that how that
I have
happened?
no idea. I didn't actually know about the pig until after the signal wrap was up. And then I started hearing from the community about the pig that actually does walk at Bradley Lake. So anyway, I appreciate that effort. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I've got to admit, I've never heard that one. Councilmember Adler.
Thanks. Thank you, Eric. Chair Pugh, good to see you. And I just want to give my appreciation for the consideration by the commission to work with PSE to get a box wrapped in the splash pad. You know, I hope, despite the challenges that there are with the PSE boxes, obviously being owned by PSE, I hope that perhaps, you know, thought can be given to that on how to build a better partnership. And if this one goes well and it doesn't get damaged or any service is impacted that's provided by that box, that perhaps we can look at expanding it to other park facilities, which was my thought when I served on the commission. So this is very exciting. Thank you. It is great to hear from our community members who are also artists that participate. Please continue participating. It's really lovely to see folks' talents. I am the least creative person you will ever meet. So to know that individuals possess such talent is really moving. And thank you for taking the time to participate in our program. And thank you to all of our residents for serving. We appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further questions or comments, Eric, thank you, and thank you for being here. Appreciate your patience waiting for this agenda item at the very end. Artist too. Thank you. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to the city manager's report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Your agenda for your study session next week, we'll have a comprehensive plan update with staff and the consultant coming to update you on that. It'll be a pretty extensive presentation. Eric and consultant Eric Johnson, our public affairs officer, will be doing an update on the wayfinding signage plan. And then Dan Vessels, the city clerk, will be doing a presentation on the downtown parking update. So a robust study session agenda. Also, just would like to point out, you can't necessarily see it behind me, but council, through your direction and selection and through appropriation of LTAC funds, we do now have installed the always in season behind here, which is a nice feature for the council chambers. So thank you for that. And that's the extent of my report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Adler, council reports.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make this quick. I had to ask myself if we had met since WSU Day at the Fair, which was on August 31st, and we have not. So I will quickly just provide an update on how terrific and outstanding the event went. It was a very hot day, and it was even hotter inside the tent because we had a sellout crowd, and majority of people who registered for tickets did show up, which was about just under 300 people. We had 300 tickets. So very exciting. It was terrific to have the WSU Alumni Association join us. I was not sure if they were going to be able to be there. And so when I walked in and saw them, that was very exciting. And who knew that you do not have to be a WSU alumnus to join the association? So Mayor Castema and I both joined the association, and I look forward to hearing from them every month until the end of time, probably. And I want to thank Councilmember Gilliam for also joining the event. Appreciate your support. And, you know, it was a really terrific opportunity to highlight the WSU Research and Extension Center here in Puyallup, and talk about the programs that are offered at that campus. I felt like it was a really smart way to bring together what is so well known about WSU, which is the football program, for better or for worse, and which right now it's really good, it's 2-0. And the way in which WSU exists here in our community. And so I appreciate all the WSU staff, particularly from the PREC, that joined us on a holiday weekend. And I also would like to take a moment to thank our own Dan Vessels for being a project lead on this and rolling with me on an idea that was a little bit last minute. I really do appreciate your help. I hope that you feel like this came together pretty well, despite some challenges that we cleared pretty quickly. I really appreciated your help, and I hope that you had a great time on vacation. I think it was your birthday, so whatever you were doing was probably very fun, and we missed you, but your hard work did not go unnoticed. So thank you very much for working with me on that and leading me through. And the day ended, like I said, WSU won against Portland State. So appreciate the fair, appreciate the partnership. We will move forward with College Appreciation Week with another week in April, focusing and celebrating Pierce College Puyallup. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. I actually had it on my list to say, well done, Councilmember Adler, for the WSU Day. So the recap, of course, was phenomenal, but your heart for bringing community together, for representing well, and really highlighting the benefit of collaboration. I'm honored to get to be on your team. Also super proud of Mayor Castema for showing up. I'm sure Councilmember Adler had the time to process what she wanted to say at the pulpit or the stand. But I was like, I'm just stepping in because I'm here to support. What do I say? And I was like, what do you guys got going on? And so, you know, being human, you as a council member, you're still human and you don't always know how to highlight certain things. But I was honored to be in the presence of our mayor and Councilmember Adler. So, also a huge thank you to, I love our City of Puyallup seal. It's beautiful. It is in the perfect location. I wonder how cool it looks from you guys. Look pretty good? Which means it probably looks really good on our Zoom video too, so.
Great.
It's balanced? Okay, cool. I was saying hello to people and they're like, hey, has that always in season, Puyallup always in season sign always been up? And I'm like, what? Oh, that looks phenomenal. So, yeah, I guess I'm slow to notice, but I was talking with our wonderful librarians and they pointed that out. This is a warning to Puyallup. Tomorrow is Fair Day. So I guess I want to do a huge thank you to our Puyallup Police Department for all the overtime hours and keeping everybody safe and helping people find their cars at the end of the day. Really, really grateful for you and the collaborative work that you do with other, I'm not sure what to call them, municipalities of officers to come in and keep our city safe in the midst of hosting, I believe it's the 6th largest state in the nation, but I could be off on that. So thank you. Your whole team are full of rock stars. And then, of course, because I do represent Main Street Association, or I get to hang out with them once a month on the board. I got to do a plug for them. September 28th is the SIP Puyallup. Come buy your tickets. You can buy them online. Just enjoy different wines at different stores and see what Puyallup has to offer. And we are delighted to host you. So good job, Puyallup team.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Dorr.
Sorry, I'm finding my unmute button. So Battle of the Badges, the PPD, congratulations to them for just the one Puyallup event. It was a fantastic event as always. the Battle of the Badges. It was like they were between the two entities. We had a van and a half of school supplies donated to communities and schools. And we saw some great moves this year. Central Pierce did take the trophy, but they have, if you look at the names on that trophy, PPD is the overall winner. So we're going with that. But I want to thank both the police department and the fire department for continuing to participate in that event. And they always put their heart and soul into our community, not just in their jobs, but in being willing to go put themselves out there for a good cause. Councilmember Adler, congratulations on that. I appreciate that you took College Appreciation Days and made it something new and exciting in a partnership. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. And I have 2 family members battling some serious illnesses. So I'm doing my best to be in all places at one time. So I apologize, I could not make that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Dorr. Councilmember Whitting.
I'm going to make mine brief tonight. I'd like to comment on the always in season Puyallup. I just want to give you my perspective. I'm looking at it from the camera over here, and I can't see the second P in Puyallup. So I don't know if that's something we can do or whether or not it's set, but it might be a little better to shift it over just a hair. And I see your point. I appreciate all the events that we've been going through this summer, and I think that PPD was doing great on the lip sync at the Battle of the Badges, but when the other team does the worm, what can you say? Anyway, that's all for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Whitting. Actually, I think all of you did an excellent job of summing up the activities in the community, and WSU event was very, very eventful. I hope that by joining the Alumni Association and then being active with them, that someday they can recognize that we can have a large conference facility here for WSU alumni right here in Puyallup. If people in Puyallup have not gone out to the WSU Research and Extension Center at the end of Pioneer, you need to do it. It's 160 acres, and it will become even more precious gem. It's been there since, what was it, 1890 thereabouts? So it's been there just for decades, and it can prove to be a tremendous asset for this community. I do want to say this before we close tonight's meeting, that Deputy Mayor Dennis King was involved in an accident. He is fine. His family members are fine, but it was really a pretty severe accident. Someone was going at excess speed, somewhere around 50 miles an hour, and rear-ended his automobile with his children in the car. And I know that he's not here this evening because he's just suffering some of the repercussions, but we just thank God that he and his family were able to survive that. He was able to pull off slightly enough so that he didn't get the full brunt of the impact. But I say that to keep him in your thoughts and prayers, because I think that, he's kind of dealing with that aftermath. So with that, I want to thank you for tonight's meeting. Just a great meeting, exploring a lot of issues, passing a lot of important issues or, proclamations, etc. And it's good to see the artists here from the community who've joined us. So with that, we will see you all next week. Thank you.